Your gas is free. Your gas is free. Based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.
Hello and welcome to another Webster Report. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who's contacted myself and Alex over the past few weeks in particular, as well as this past week. We've had a lot of great feedback. People are enjoying honest conversation, really. It's not about egos or anything like that. It's about honest conversations. We're looking to have a bit more of an honest conversation about things tonight. It's not just about the decline of, it's not even Western civilization. We're talking about the world here. Societies everywhere. We're seeing radio pages explode that just so happen to be in the pockets of Hezbollah people, and then they're fighting back against Israel now. So we're seeing a big shift happening over in the Middle East. These are things that have been prophesied in the Bible. Can't find anything else that's got as much evidence about the prophecies being fulfilled as that book and those scriptures. If you've not bothered reading them and you're a conspiracy theorist, I suggest you have a bit of a look at the biggest conspiracy ever. You know, you need to look at these things for yourself. Don't let people tell you what it is. Take the information off people, but then go and do your own due diligence. That's what it's about. It's about having an honest conversation and being able to talk to others about everything. There's nothing off the table here, guys. You know, there's no facts that you can say with what you've been taught through the education system, through politics. We've got to start asking the proper questions. And, you know, until we can have those honest conversations and not be shut up by people and legislation and things like that, then, you know, what can we do? Hopefully we're not going to have the technical issues like we had last week. If anything slows down my end, I'll click the camera off and hopefully we can keep going. We've not got the lag that we had last week, so that's always a bonus, always. Alex, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. How are you doing? You good?
I'm good. Have you got any input for this evening?
Who, me? Oh, well, yeah, I suppose I always have. Just backing up what you said, I'm going to be meeting a friend tomorrow who's been a friend for around 20 years. And she's writing an introduction. She's got a degree in English literature, bless her. And she's doing an introduction to a book of poems. So, like, I've been writing poems for the best part of 30 years now. And I realised I published over 200 it was 4 different poetry books, and then I produced the 5th one, and then I decided to do a best of. So that's spanning probably this period, as I say, well over 25 years. And it took me a while to realise that all these stories had a fairly common theme underlying them all. And the point was, the last volume was a best of collection, which several people were selecting what they thought the best poems were. And one person in particular, who might well be on the chat tonight, Ed, the man who holds the spanner, he pointed out some stuff about some of my poems, that they had a lot of darkness in them. And funnily enough, even though there's darkness in like loads of my poems, I haven't realised just how much darkness there was. And in the end, I've ended up organising 101 poems and calling it The Darkness of the Light. And what you were saying about stories, it struck me that when I was writing these poems, I didn't think I was writing them autobiographically. There's 2 poems at the beginning that I wrote when I was 9, and they're both really dark. and they reflect what I was going through that I didn't even fully understand at the time. I was writing about these dark subject issues, the things that I've been through. So I think we can all look at our lives, and quite a few of us have had a crack maybe at writing poems, and maybe we've not published any. But it was really interesting looking back and surveying and seeing these patterns. And I've not released it yet because she's writing the introduction as Leanne. So it should be out within a week or so. But I'm not doing a plug here, by the way. It's just, I think stories, our personal stories, are a huge part of everything that we do. And if we don't take them seriously, we'll always look at the stuff that's going on out there. I've said this several times, but it's worth repeating again. And so obviously you've made contact, yourself and Kat's got her own story to tell. Welcome, Kat. And it may not be poetic, but I'm pretty sure it will have darkness and light in it. So my volume's called The Darkness of the Light. Sometimes out of the darkness, we learn more because of suffering and pain and so on. And all humans suffer. All humans confront their own mortality and eventual death. All humans lose loved ones, pets. So no matter what spiritual tradition or religious tradition you're in, or even if you think you're an atheist, there are certain things that bind us all together. And it's the stories that we're all coming here tonight with. So obviously we don't hear all those stories. There's a bunch of people going to be watching this who will all have their own story. And I think it's just important that tonight we're going to hear another one.
Well, we're looking, you mentioning the light and the darkness. Sometimes the darkness isn't that dark. And because you're brought up in the dark, you don't realize there is any other light. You know, I certainly didn't. So, you know, we'll find out how Kat got around to all this. But, you know, I've said in my testimony many a time, when I found out that your gas were free and I was taught to do the opposite, then that meant something really big and fundamental had been done wrong to the mass part of the population. I couldn't get away from that. You know, it's not about beating gas bills or this, that, and the other. It's the monumental picture of everything is slanted and broke against you. And as I said before, 15 years in the prison service, the worst criminals I've met was solicitors and judges, and they weren't behind bars. But they are the worst criminals because some of them actually do think they're doing the right thing, and you know it doesn't always work out like that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Kat Watkins. Well, Kat Watkins for now. And, you know,
yeah.
After seeing some of your work, Kat, and had some good chats with you, I know that you've got pokers in the fire left, right, and centre now. We just discussed it was about 15 years ago that you first started to wake up. So, you know, tell us a bit about yourself, where you've come from, how you got here, and fill in the gaps for us.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on, Paul and Alex. Really appreciate it. It's good to have these discussions and chats and figure out everyone's story. As Alex said, they're all important at the end of the day. So my story is quite a bit of a roller coaster, I would imagine. Quite a lot of people's are as well. So I know I'm not alone in that. But how I got here, well, you know, all my life I'm not going to say asleep. But I just didn't care either way. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, when I wasn't brought up with Christ anyway, right? I was completely unreligious. My family were unreligious. So I never went to Sunday school. Other than the little bits that were still in schools then, obviously Christianity is not in schools anymore. But there was when I was younger, just little bits and pieces. That's all that I knew. Anyway, got into, you know, from about the age of 11 is when I started smoking weed, and 12 I was taking mushrooms, I was drinking alcohol, you know, living that lifestyle, just sort of a wild teenager then, you know, quite a wild teenager. And again, not even thinking about anything really about what was going on in the world or whatever, nothing. you know, and I lived my life like that. Then as I got older, I was doing more partying. I got into heavier drugs. You know, I was in ecstasy and cocaine and acid and things like that, ages like 14, 15. You know, I was taking a lot of drugs, not a care in the world. I thought I was having a good time. You know, I was young. I didn't even sort of realize anything really. And I moved away when I was, sorry, what was that, Paul?
You think you're invincible at that age?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought I knew it all. I really did think I was invincible, and how I'm still here, I don't know. Mind the situations I did put myself in, you know, as a youngster. I moved away from Wales when I was 19. I moved up to Edinburgh because I come to sort of a bit of a brick wall in my life then, and I was like, you know what, I just don't want to be doing. It wasn't the best move because it got worse, but I thought it was. I thought I was taking myself out of that environment. You know, maybe I'd be able to clean up, and I didn't. I just got worse when I was up there. I was in this, you know, Edinburgh's quite prolific for that sort of thing anyway. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of jumped out of the frying pan straight into the fire, so to speak. And then I came back when I was about 21. I then rushed into a marriage. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was quite young, again, still taking drugs, doing whatever, still living this high life. And then I met Darren when I was 25. So that was 16 years ago now. Darren was the same as me in that respect. You know, he was a party animal too. So we kind of met on that, you know, basis then. And we would be out partying every weekend, as you do, work hard, party hard, that sort of thing. And when I was 26, I fell pregnant. And I remember this. I even remember what I was wearing. I was 5 months pregnant. This is how asleep I was and not awake to any of the corruption and whatever. I was watching EastEnders, sat on the settee playing Sudoku. And Darren was in the other room and he was watching something, which turned out to be this documentary. And he had stopped it and said, Kath, I think we need to watch this together. So he watched like 20 minutes of it and was like, I'm not watching anymore. I'll watch it with you. And that was the documentary, and it was called Vaccine Nation, and it had come out in 2008. And it was about a guy in America who'd been accused of shaken baby syndrome, and the baby died, and he went to prison for it. And the documentary was about what actually happened, and he had spent 6 years in jail. But they found out in the end that it actually wasn't, he didn't shake that baby, it was vaccine damage. So, but in the first 20 minutes of that documentary, I was bawling my eyes out. Like I say, I had no details, nothing at all, just, you know, some about what, you know, his story. And then I went on a deep, deep, deep dive. I just knew it was, I knew something, you know, like you said earlier about, you know, about gas, and you knew that something monumental had to be wrong. It was that kind of feeling. It was like, this is insane, but I knew it was right. So I spent hours, and I'd be up, you know, I was heavily pregnant, you know, I'd be up till like 4 or 5 in the morning sometimes, just researching and reading hundreds and hundreds of comments on these posts and picking out these articles and documentaries and whatever else. And then I had that feeling, I think Grace had been born at this time. So I sort of accumulated about, not much, but in a 4 or 5 month period, I had enough information, I thought, to be able to speak on it. Now, at that time, I didn't have any friends who were conspiratorial minded. I was already quite, I say, well known, you know, in this town, you know, for being a party animal and whatever. You know, my father was quite well known. You know, I had a lot of friends then, you know, but none of them were conspiracy theorists of any kind. So I thought, I'll put this on Facebook, thinking people are going to want to know, in my naivety at that time. And I can remember, oh, wow, I put a post up about vaccines, and there was about 25, 30 people, and they all just jumped on me. And I meet like, and I'm trying to battle myself. You know what it's like when you first, your defenses go up, and when you're being mocked and, you know, had a go at and attacked or whatever, at that time, the natural reaction and response is to sort of defend myself then. So I was trying to answer all of these separate comments from people and whatever. And it was from that moment, I could not keep my mouth closed. It didn't matter. So I was quite happy. And obviously it escalated from there, as it does. Do you know what I mean? It goes on and whatever. And then I came across you then, Paul. I can't remember when it was. Maybe hang on a minute now. Grace must have been 2013, 2014. It must have been. I was looking at what was the get out of debt free. Remember that?
Yeah.
That thingy. And I was reading all I can't remember who set that up. Was it? His name is gone. Roger. It wasn't Roger Hay.
It was Ceylon and.
Oh, that's it, Mark Ceylon.
Mark Ceylon, but the fellow who originally set it up.
He won Roger Hay, was there?
No, it wasn't Roger. Roger was the one. Roger was the reason I had armed police called on me at Wigan County Court, because the year before he tried to make a citizen's arrest of a judge in a council tax hearing in Birkenhead, and that set a precedent for anybody challenging jurisdiction. The police would be called. So over the first 5 hearings, I had armed police, video evidence gatherers, and everything because of Roger Hayes.
No way! I remember that. I remember when he tried to do that. So yeah, I remember being on Get Out, and then I came across you, as you do when you're going through. And I was looking at the bills of exchange, and and all of that sort of stuff. By that point, me and Darren, because Darren was on social media at that point. He hadn't been on it for years now because he just can't be bothered with it, which is fair enough. He just got annoyed with all the bickering and whatever. He's like, I can't do this. But at the time he was. So me and Darren were completely labelled as the town nutcases at that point, right? We were just simply the town crazies. Our families had gone, our friends had gone, typical stuff. Do you know what I mean? You get alienated, you just mocked and you gossiped about and whatever else. I didn't care though. I mean, sometimes it hurt, especially with my family. Obviously, that's a different, I put on a front, and as you do, but deep down it was hurting. Because I used to be, I got a very big family and I used to be close with them, So that broke that relationship down. And then I had the bright idea. I can't believe I did this now in hindsight, but I'd learned the financial system, and I had learned what it really was. I'd learned about mortgages, the signature creates I'd learned all about that. And in my just thingy moment, I said to Darren, right, we need to stop paying everything. Now at this time, yeah, right. At this time, I had another house that I was renting out, which I bought with my ex-husband, right? So I had moved in with Darren, rented this thingy out. So I basically stopped paying everything. And I mean everything: council tax, water, gas, electric, mortgages, everything, right? Now it was a sink or swim moment, obviously, right? Because you think in naivety, because it looks, you know what it's like, Paul. It looks like this, silver bullet, and it makes so much sense, and it's there. It's it's in statute. You think you're like, no, we got it. There's nothing they can do. How wrong I was, how massively wrong I was, and which is why I'm so glad that Richard Vobes had you on actually the other week, because it's important for people to see the other side of it. Do you know what I mean? Not the side where you've got people sat behind their computers who've never actually done this themselves, but are quite happy to tell other people to do it. And this, you have to do it this certain way. And if something happens, I've seen people just go, oh, well, you didn't do it properly. When I lost, it ended up being, go on.
I got accused of painting a bleak picture. It's just the truth.
That's exactly what I said to Darren. He was just being honest. We can pretend if you want, but do you know what I mean? Like you're going to suffer for it, and I'm definitely proof of that, because at the end, I mean, don't get me wrong, when it came to the credit cards and the little bits like that, I did the 3-letter and the stop all, and I did get rid of them. They were pretty simple to deal with. Council tax was a bit harder. They did come round it. I mean, I was saying, you wouldn't be. Actually, you would believe what I was saying. What was the letter tennis that was going back and forth the council, the things that were being said and whatever were quite bizarre, really, in hindsight, when I think of it. But they did send them round. It was a couple of days before Christmas in 2016. And it was me and Grace, and they had a warrant. They didn't really have a warrant. They had a fake warrant for Darren, right? For not paying council tax or whatever. And I had a standoff with, so Grace was only about 5 or 6 at the time. So it was only me and her in the house. So I had a standoff with 2 bailiffs and 2 coppers. And the copper was being quite nice to me at the time. Do you know what I mean? Oh, you know, just open the door. I was like, I'm not opening the door. I know I haven't got to, you know, and he was coaxing me too. And then they phoned for, so bearing in mind, this is a civil matter anyway, right? So the police, there's no breach of the peace. I'm in the house with my 6-year-old daughter. There's no one breaching the peace. They're breaching the peace. Anyway, they phoned for backup, right? So I had 4 coppers, 2 bailiffs, right, intimidating me at the door. Now, I can remember walking around the living room and I got Grace comes running up to me and she goes, Mummy, there's a man. She'd gone in her bedroom and looked out the window and she said, there's a man, a bald man at the back of the house looking at. So what they'd done is they'd surrounded, because I lived on the end house. So they had surrounded the house at that time, right? And I thought, right, I got one shot here now. You know what I mean? It's like, I knew it was a load of nonsense. We know that the stamping duty. We know that the council have hired out the hall and there's no liability order for it. We don't know all that, but it doesn't quite wash like that when you come face to face with it. Anyway, I said to the cop, because the cop said to me in the end, we're coming through the door, basically. We're going to come in. And I said, if you do that, you'll be, was it the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2017, it might have been? That's what I used, 2015. And that's all I said to him. And he stopped. He took 2 steps back, because at this point I've been arguing that they haven't got a liability order as well, right? So at that point, I could see him through the frosted glass. They were all in front of the glass, first of all, mind. But he took a couple of steps back and he said, I'll be back now. But my neighbour, who was like brilliant, her eyes and ears were great. She'd be spying, seeing where she'd always tell me with it if the bailiffs were on their way. She was still on her doorstep. And as they walked off, the copper says to the bailiff in the car park, I couldn't hear any of this because obviously I'm still in the house. He says, have you got a liability order? And the bailiff said to the copper, no, we haven't got one, but we know one exists. And the copper said, you need to get back in the car and leave. And I never saw him again.
I can write one now for you. I can write one.
Yeah, exactly. So, you go down those routes and whatever. And as you know, we went through the house. Now, that was something else. You'd have to have, Darren would be the bet, because at that time, we had to learn fast because we were battling the house, the mortgage fraud and everything, right? But when we got the SAR, right, with subject access requests are just gold, because that's where you're going to pull anything up. Otherwise, you're not going to know what's going on. And they've become wise to them now. But back then, not many people weren't doing it. They didn't even know about them really. So we did manage to find, and it was fraud in basically what had happened when Darren went to remortgage the house, because he had it with his ex. So he had a broker come round. At the time, he was a part-time postman. This was before I even got with him. At the time, he was a part-time postman. The broker came round and he said, they filled out a thingy and whatever, and off he went. But Darren was ended up paying on a 70 grand mortgage at that time, back 15, 16, 17 years ago, £700 a month. He was on the highest possible thingy. Now, he didn't know at that point. He was begging, borrowing, stealing, whatever, to gather money every month, and he was in arrears and whatever else. But it turns out when we had the SAR, the application form was in there, and it was Darren even kept a post-it note. I don't know how he does. He's so organized for a bloke, honestly, right? He still had a post-it note with all his mortgage documents from when the broker came round, and he wrote his name on it, right? So he had the handwriting of the broker who he must have put Darren's in the bin, his application form. He must have chucked that in the bin, and he wrote out a new one, and he put on the highest interest rate mortgage. And he said he had his own business as a courier, and he put him on 3 times the amount that he was earning as a part-time postman. Right. So, and he forged his signature, and he did a really crap job of it as well. And he forged his signature on the direct debit mandate. There were 2 deeds for it, 2 key facts documents. There were essentially 2 mortgages within it as well. It was all, you'd have to have Darren on to explain it, how bad it was, right? So anyway, as you know, when we were back and forth the civil courts, we didn't see the same judge twice. They kept jumping. It was like a hot potato. We're going to move it there, we're going to move it there, we're going to move it there, right? Because nobody wanted to touch it. In the end, Darren got threatened with a 99-year civil restraining order, right, to go into the civil courts. They didn't want him in there. So we were like, all right then. So he did a private criminal prosecution, and he went into the criminal courts. Now he did, first of all, the judge was like testing him, and made him do something on vicarious liability and whatever else. And we had 4 people. We had the broker, director of the broker company, the chief exec of Kensington Mortgage Company, and an employee, right? And he had 30 charges. And in the end, he had to, because it was so clear, the evidence was just so like crystal clear. If Darren had done that, he'd be in jail for forging all of those documents. So he did. He agreed to 29 out of 30 charges, and he issued the summons to all 4. Right? I'm just making this as like sort of quick as possible. And things that happened, you probably would believe, Paul, because you understand how this works, right? So anyway, those 4 summons were issued for these people, and we were like, I can't believe it. We're in a situation now where but the one thing we did bring her in, and I thought this is where, in hindsight, this is probably where we did shoot ourselves in the foot, because we were trying to help everyone else. If we just stuck to that single fraud in our mortgage thingy, I think we would have been all right. Yes. But we brought up the securitization issue, right? And we had all the evidence for that. Darren found his in a pool, like an actual address to show where it was sold to and everything, right? So I think we shot ourselves in the foot. We were trying to do well, and it just didn't work for us. So what happened, and this was the most bizarre experience I had in the courts, right? We were there all day. So when they were supposed to come and do their plea, right, the one guy was there, the chief exec of the brokerage, who had served 5 years in prison in 1989 till 1994 for committing fraud by deception, right? By doing exactly the same thing. And the FSA was never to give him, he was never to work in finance again. And he came out and set this company up, right? So he'd already done it before. So he was there, because I could tell it was him anyway. And then, like when you're sat in the courtroom, you sat in the waiting room, right? And obviously, even though we were asked to go in the morning, we were there all day. So we were seeing other people in and out of that courtroom. They were in and out, in and out. We were the last people of the day, right? So we walk into that courtroom, and my guts just hit the floor. I knew, right? Because all of those seats were filled with men in black suits, right? Now I was like, where have they come from? So they didn't go in the top way, because we were in the waiting room. They must have come up from chambers. I don't know what on earth went on, right? But I knew we were screwed. I knew they were going to screw us over. And the clerk, who was always, she loved Darren. She couldn't wait to issue those summons. It was like she was waiting for this moment. She would not make eye contact with Darren, right? She kept turning her chair this way and that way. And I knew, I was like, and then he dropped everything. The same judge who agreed to the 29 out of 30 charges, the CPS came in and they shut it down. They shut it down. And then 2 days later, they came round, and that was the video that everybody saw, which went viral. And they came, they didn't even try the lock. They came straight in with a crowbar, an angle grinder, and a sledgehammer, and they smashed through our front door. And that was when they took the house. So we were still in the middle of litigation. That's when I realized, well, before then, we realized how corrupt they were, but we were in too deep. Do you know what I mean? We were like 20 grand in arrears at that point, because we've been fighting them for a couple of years. And we were like, we got to go for it. If we lose, we lose. And we did. They had my other house as well. So, and in that moment, boom, gone, everything, the house, my possessions, my business, everything. And I had to move in with my mum and dad. But in hindsight, that was a good thing, because obviously my dad died from the COVID jab in 2021, right? And so 2017, that happened. The 31st of July, 2017 was when that happened. At this point, though, I was already into the new age. So about 2015, I found out about the Earth, which ironically enough made me realize that there was a creator, definitely, right? Because I knew we didn't evolve from monkeys. So I knew that there was a creator, right? And that's when I knew that was the, and then I can remember somebody, and she did it with all good intentions, right? She did it with all good intentions, but it was probably one of the most worst books I could have read, right? But this was while I was going through fighting the mortgage. This was while I was going through, so it kind of helped me. She gave me The Secret to watch by Rhonda Byrne. Now that, obviously, the law of attraction, that really set me off on this like amazing, what I thought was amazing journey, right? And I had my crystal table. I had, you know, I read all these books, you know, I had all these esoteric books and on manifestation and law of attraction and Christ consciousness and all of these things. And I was just constantly reading them. And I thought all this knowledge was, you know, amazing. And I was manifesting things, you know, or at least I thought I was manifesting money and whatever else, but I was just, who was I getting it from was obviously the thing, but I didn't know at this point still. So 2017, I ended up moving in with my mum and dad. And we lost everything. I was still massively into the new age then as well. Like I say, I was preaching this as well. If I could show my first ever Facebook account got disabled completely, unfortunately, but that one had all the statuses and everything that I used to put on there, and, you know, preaching the new age. I had loads, and unfortunately I haven't got that account anymore. I wish I did, so I could show people, look, I used to say these exact same things. Do you know what I mean? I used to say the exact same things. Anyway, then I started to sort of come away. So when I started looking into the sex education in school, right? So it was about 5 years ago, something like that. I was looking into what the sexual liberation movement had done to society, the breakdown of the family unit, why they're sexualizing kids in school and whatever else, right? And I went really, really deep and dark into the satanic side of it, the satanic rituals, the real, what these people do. And I knew that Satan was real. When I was looking into all of this stuff, Bohemian Grove and the music industry and Hollywood, and that, you know, just like pedophilia was just absolutely everywhere, I knew that there was an evil running amok. I knew that. And by the way, I used to suffer when I was younger with sleep paralysis, and I don't know if anyone's had that, right? But it's really, really frightening. Obviously, you can't move, you can't breathe, you can't, you know, it's terrifying. And I used to actually go through that and just be terrified, as many other people do, right? You know, there's lots of people who suffer with it, and I didn't know what it was, but I did used to suffer with it. Then I didn't have it for ages. Now, when I was looking at, it was last February, right? And I was looking really deeply, and I'm obviously exposing the sex education and exposing the sexual liberation movement. And I was looking into the occult. This is where I came across Aleister Crowley. This is where I was coming across and thinking, this new ageism that I've actually been dabbling in is coming from really dark places. It does appear all love and light, you know, it's very inviting. And at the end of the day, Satan comes as an angel of light, because if he came with his pitchfork and horns, we would all know, wouldn't we? And we wouldn't go near him. So I can see that's, you know. Anyway, I hadn't had sleep paralysis for a long time, and I was starting to think about, knowing that Satan was real, starting to think about Jesus, right? Just only a little bit, but knowing that there was. And then one night, I was led there last February, and because I'm familiar with it, I knew that I was going to get sleep paralysis. And I thought, oh no, I hadn't had it for a long time. And the only thing I could think to do was to, obviously couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I recited the Lord's Prayer in my mind. And like that, within the click of a finger, nothing happened. It stopped. And I was like, there is so much truth in, I realized at that point it was demonic, and there's so much truth in Jesus's name being, they were frightened of that, and that's the reason it stopped. Again, it must have happened a couple of days later as well. It did happen a couple of days later. I did the same thing. I recited the Lord's Prayer in my mind, stopped. I haven't had it since. That was like 18 months ago or whatever. And at that same time as well, when I was kind of, you know, looking at the occult and looking who was involved, and I was looking at the 10-point plan of the occult by like the likes of Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Annie Besant, and those types of people, Aleister Crowley, those types of people, I was realizing how demonic it was. And then my daughter, because she's home educated, she wanted to go to a youth club. And I was like, the one at the road from me was doing, I didn't like what they were doing because of this whole woke agenda and, you know, all of this inclusivity and whatever. They're putting children in very dangerous situations. And because that's what my work is, safeguarding children, I know where the red flags are. So what they were doing at the youth club was the age 10 to 25 LGBT groups, and I was thinking, you don't put a 10-year-old with do you know what I mean? So I was like, you're not going there. But we had done an RSE, which is relationships and sexuality education, which is going through the schools at the moment. We had done a presentation in the church, the Victory Church where I live. And I remember the pastor saying that he ran a youth club. And I was like, okay, she can go there. So she went to this youth club, which was in the church, and she really enjoyed it. And she said, can I go to the service on Sunday? So at this time, it's sort of parallel to me coming out of the New Age movement, realizing that Jesus is real. I still hadn't picked up a Bible or anything, but I was kind of there. And then she was actually going with one of my younger cousins at the time. So I wasn't going with her, and neither was her father. But she was going along with my cousin on a Sunday morning, and she kept saying, Mum, Dad, will you come, and whatever. And I was still sort of holding back a little bit, and doing my own thing, doing my own sort of research or whatever into it. And then I think after Christmas, so this year after Christmas, Darren went with her first, and then in May I had gone as well, and I've been there since, and we were baptized a couple of weeks ago, the three of us together, because since then, once I get my head into something, I'm going to get my head into something, and it that was it. I read my Bible every single day. There's a few, I'm obviously, because I'm quite new to this, I'm reaching out to people, and there's a couple of really good YouTubers that do amazing series on things, and do you know what I mean? And that's really, really massively helped me. I've got to be honest. There are some brilliant, and I was watching testimony after testimony, especially New Age to Jesus testimony, because there's no shortage of it. I can assure you. I've seen so much of it now, and they're so important, because I think the New Age, there's many different things that are caught up in lies and deceit, and we're led down the path. But I think personally, I believe that New Age is the most powerful deception, because of the way it comes out as being love and light. It's very easy then to get sucked into it, isn't it? Because it's seemingly empowering, and it humbled me fast when I came out of that, though, realizing actually what on earth was I thinking, and seeing other, and I don't want to bring anyone down here, because obviously I was hooked into it as well, but I can see now that I've stepped out of it, the damage it's actually doing to people. They really do, not all of them, but a lot of them really do believe they're superior, because they've got all this esoteric knowledge and whatever. And the other one I get a lot of the time is and I used to say it myself as well, all occult means is hidden. And I said, yeah, it does mean hidden, but it also means hidden from the people who practice it. They don't even realize that they're part of occult practices. And theosophy is Freemasonry. So on the same hand, you've got people who are pulling apart Freemasonry for what it is, but not actually realizing that it's the Freemasons and theosophy that brings in the occult, the way they think. You are gods, we are, in the belief that we are gods, and that was the first lie ever told by Satan in the Bible. Do you know what I mean? In Genesis, you will be as gods. So
in the chat room, the Wigan Joker, Jimmy, he's going backwards and forwards with all this stuff now, because Jimmy's had an awakening as well. He's looking for truth and this, that, and the other, and he has found that I think yoga and things like that and Reiki have helped people and could have helped him. So he's asking the question: if it helps, how can it be bad? Well, that's the epitome of this lie, because I certainly come from a Christian point of view now, having done mediumship, having done all that. I see what it does. It's that wide path. There is a wide path that leads to destruction, and it's easy. It's very easy going. You can feel better. You can have all this empowerment, things like that. But
temporarily, though.
Yes,
because
and on the
because
true
I was
story,
watching. I tell you what, it's brilliant. It was a 3-hour one, but it was good. It was like the New Age exposed, updated, right? And they go through all the things we think are good, like meditation and yoga and Reiki and crystal healing and tarot cards and, you know, all of this sorts of stuff, and show you not only biblically but scientifically as well why it doesn't work. And they were doing studies, and this actually quite shocked me, but it doesn't now. Like you say, looking at it from a Christian point of view, it changes everything, doesn't it? So whereas before you would think meditation, people feel great after meditation and whatever, but when you realize that demons are real, when you're emptying your mind of all things, is so much easier for them to get in.
it's got to be,
And this basically shows you about suicidal thoughts and everything that people can get after that. You know, a lot of people have come out of, like what you were saying, like mediumship and tarot reading and all these things. And they were saying, even though they had a smiling face or whatever, they wanted to jump off the balcony.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was something dark.
You see it with a lot of celebrities as well. The ones who have got everything. No, I think it was Heath Ledger was once asked a question. He says, everybody asks me what kind of cars I've got, what my house is like and everything like that. Nobody ever asks me if I'm happy. And he wasn't happy. He had everything that this world could give him, and he was miserable. And I think, for somebody like me anyway, I don't think I got to any of those kind of heights where I thought, oh, I've got everything. It was a life that was comfortable, but I've made some whopper. You mentioned about some decisions that you made when you was younger. I don't know how I'm still sat here, if I'm being honest, because of the whoppers of decisions I've made in my life. And I wouldn't have thought. I've been searching since I was 16 when my dad was killed. What happens after this life? As far as I could see, all religions was control and restraint. It was nothing about salvation or anything like that, because the way it was preached, the way it was taught, it was either so lukewarm that it was just a story, or it was give you nightmares of some old fella up in a pulpit pointing at you, shouting, "Repent!" Which, it just means change your mind, but it doesn't sound like that when you've got some old fella shouting at you. And it was just 15 years of sitting through left footer and right footer services. The Catholic service was 10 minutes longer because they have a bit of a wafer and a bit of a drink. Other than that, it was the same hymns, the same sermon, everything. I couldn't find a religion card. There wasn't one. So I ended up doing stuff. I was into the energy. I had crystals. I was doing readings. I said to you off before the show that I was asked to go around spiritualist churches because I was good at giving the messages, and I didn't know where they were coming from. And one of the spiritual healers, a good friend of mine, she was saying, "Just go inside yourself. Just go inside yourself." Well, there was only me in there at that time. There was me arguing with myself, and I just said, "I want to punch you in the face every time you say that because I don't know what you mean." And it wasn't until I got further down the line and I got to that point where I was doing readings and then it was just switched off. And that's when the law stuff started. And that's where I saw all the corruption of this world, all the establishments, layer upon layer, line upon line, everything was all corrupt, lies, and everything was evil. And everything could be easily assigned to Satan and his bloodlines and everything. And I went, if that's right, then there's got to be the opposite. And the only unique message I found was that gospel message where Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets there but by me." And all these people went, "That's a lie." You liars, this is a lie. I thought this is going to be interesting. And because it stood out so much, just intellectually, that this is unique. All you liars say this is a lie, and he's saying, "I'm the way, nobody else, no other way." Look at what's happening now. The Pope came out last week. Me and Alex were talking about it last week. The Pope come out and said, all religions lead to God. Now, if you're a Catholic and you read the Bible, you should know that the Pope is now apostasy, because that's not true. So he's preaching a different gospel.
No.
When we start seeing this gospel that's being preached, this light, gospel light, where it doesn't matter what religion you are, we're all going to the same place. One of my best friends is an RE teacher, and she teaches that the Catholics go to God on a bus, the Protestants go in the car. For some reason, she always puts the Muslims on an aeroplane, but we all go to God, and that's just not the case.
It's not. Do you know what? It's not true, is there? And you just said my favorite Bible verse there, which is John 14, verse 6. I am the truth, the way, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That, because the New Age, or the one world religion they're looking for is the New Age movement, because that is the one that says there's so many different ways you can get to God. It isn't just one way through Jesus, which is a massive lie, a huge deception. And this was kind of what. So when I was looking into like all the other, because none of the others, this is when I was pulling away from it. You can speak about Buddhism, you can speak about Hinduism, you can speak about Taoism, you can speak about all that and not get, nobody takes offense to it. But as soon as you mention Christianity, and this was something, because like you say about finding out whether or not, because I used to think, we came back here to learn our life lessons, and then until we come back as many times as need be, until we'd learned them, right? And then I was looking at this whole thing with karma. So while I was looking, which is a Buddhist concept, but while I was looking at the children, right? And, children being sexually abused constantly, and it's happening. We're creating sex offenders through the porn industry anyway, which is demonic, right? So we're looking at little, this whole you attract like for like, your energy, or you're creating your own reality. It stopped me short, because I was thinking, how does a 1-year-old child attract their rapist? How does the law of attraction work in that way? Because they don't even have the capacity to think in that way anyway. So what on earth has attracted that? How have they done that, creating their own reality? And in some cases, and I couldn't believe where I was like, this is just insane. In some cases, people say, well, it's a karma situation, and it could be that in the past life they were the rapist. Right, okay then. So do we not intervene with children being raped? Oh, well, sod it, they deserve it because they were a rapist in their past life. I find that absolutely insane. And what it does do is turn people away from the bad that's happening, because it's all love and light. And, if you're matching energy, if you're attracting that, attracting like for like, you got to keep your vibe high. Well, even looking at these evil things is not going to keep you a good vibe. So from that point of view, it turns you completely away. And it says in the Bible, we're supposed to expose the wickedness in high places. And, that is what we're doing on a daily basis. We're not supposed to turn a blind eye to it. But a lot of that New Ageism and, sort of Christ consciousness, and we are all gods, that promotes, it does in a way, because you've got to turn away from it. If you're attracting like for like, and you're looking at all, because I've been told focusing on it brings it about. So me focusing on pedophilia it's not me bringing that about by focusing on it. I'm not creating it just because I'm focusing on it, but that is the way that sort of mindset can have people thinking. And that is a very dangerous mindset to have indeed, especially when I know on the scale of this is happening.
That's where we get stuck in that mindset of, love and light, just don't worry about it, don't think about it, don't talk about it. It's not really, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. When I know that
me.
Children are being abused in every town, in every city, in this land, in this world, there are kids going through this all the time. And we've got a police force at the moment that turn a blind eye if those gangs are from an ethnic background. We've got it in locally at the minute where one fellow was arrested for something that occurred yesterday. One of the gang, they arrested him and then brought him back home after 2 hours, and he was back out robbing again because they don't want to prosecute these people. If it was ordinary Lathers that were doing this, they'd be all over us. Back in the day, the police wouldn't have put up with it from when I was a kid, and there was gangs around then. But there were different types of gangs. These gangs are willing to just stab people for a bike, you know, stab you for a push bike. And they think that that's okay because they're not punished for it. There's no consequences for them.
Well, they're untouchable, aren't they? And they're aware of that, you know. They're aware of their status.
The problem is, Catboy, it's you bringing that up. You talking about this, saying we've got to do something about this. You're a bigot. You're this. You're that. When did society just suddenly become? Well, it's okay. Yes, kids can be abused as long as they're not my kids. Kids can be abused. It's just like when did this creep in? Because just going back to the demons and stuff like that. If we go back to meditation, Jimmy mentioned that he's got a lot out of meditating. And it's when you mentioned if you're meditating to empty yourself, then anybody who's got doors open, they're going to come in through them doors. And the subtle ones will come in first. They're not just going to come in and go, rawr, they're going to come in. Oh, hello. Look, this is a lovely home. Would you like to come on, we've got a great house here. It's that type of thing. So when I meditate now, I ask the Holy Spirit to come and fill that and then give me the information. Yeah. So you're actually filling yourself, you're emptying yourself of what your iniquities are and saying, please search my heart, open it, fill it with you. That for me is the only way to stop those kind of demons pushing people. And Jimmy's quite an artistic fella, so he'll be open to all that kind of stuff because we see a lot of it with artists. So if you open yourself to things like that, it's, you know, it can certainly take over and damage your life, like what you were saying. You're a bit quiet tonight, Alex. That's
and like you say,
I'm just listening.
It's probably me, the chatterbox. Yeah, you fill it. I think filling it with the Holy Spirit is the best, isn't it? It's your protection then against the demons.
Yeah, I would say so. Go on, what are you saying, Alex?
I think the problem that viewers will have in general, or skeptics in general, we're living in a world, some people call it a post-truth world. So the problem is most people just make claims. So like people say, well, I believe God is an elephant. So like Ganesh or whatever. And that's one of Janet's favorites, Janet on the chat. A blue-headed elephant. And, you know, if it floats your boat, fine. But a Hindu could just as easily say, well, yeah, you know, I believe in Ganesh. And then all hell can break out in the chat where people say, my God's better than your God. And I think the problem is, with truth claims, it's like we've got to go deeper because we all make claims, but like Jesus said, it's a lived reality. So, you know, for me, Christians are called to be the light of the world. So unless there's something different going on, you know, unless there's something that's outstanding that people recognize, then they're probably not going to believe the claim. This is one of the problems. Everyone makes claims. I mean, America makes claims, don't they, all the time about who the evil people are in the world. It's like who gets to speak first, and it's the same in courts, Webby. You know, with the accused and the accuser, it's like the person often who takes out the lawsuit can't lose in a sense. I mean, they can lose, but they're not going to get prosecuted. Like, let's just say they were doing something and it was illicit and it was proven that the argument had no merit. They wouldn't then get prosecuted because they're not the defendant who's on trial. So those kind of dynamics come into it as well. And I think at the end of the day, the problem is because of the world we're living in now with so many different voices in the marketplace of ideas, people make claims. And of course, originally in the Gospels, this Jesus character turned up and he did lots of pretty cool stuff. So for me, it's like if you've got a genuine faith and spirituality in the church, say, you're going to start seeing results. You're going to start seeing a difference in people. And if you don't see that, then a lot of people are going to go, well, you're claiming that this God is the truth, but I don't see much difference in your life. So at the end of the day, one of the problems that we've got in the world today is the church is sold out. So even under the COVID lie, the church was apostate. And it was one of the things you could see, really, all the institutional churches that were in the pocket of the government enforcing it as a health and safety issue. So they were closing churches down, all in the name of a lie. Now, that's the church out in itself. Those churches are not churches, simple as that. So, you know, this kind of thing is quite important, I think, to keep a hold on. People make claims. I think the Church of England are now getting rid of the word church, calling it a community. You know, like you say, Paul, the Pope's now stating these positions openly. So clearly, we've got ideology that's colonised churches now. And I think the best thing people can do is go back to the original texts. You know, I don't think, personally, in literature, there's any scripture that comes anywhere near the Bible.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And the churches have sold out. Most of them, not all of them, but you are absolutely right. Most of them have sold out. And I think one of the things that got me as well, actually, and I didn't know this, I was actually told, and I haven't checked myself, but she's a trustworthy source. But she said something to do, because in the church that I go to, there's a lot of people who were ex-addicts, drug addicts, alcoholics, whatever. And we were chatting, and she said, one of the ladies there said, because obviously rehab, it doesn't work most of the time. Do you know what I mean? So she gave me this statistic. We'll have to go and check, but I just want to say what she told me. Like I say, I haven't checked it, but in a non-Christian rehab, I think only 2% make it. The rest of them will relapse within 5 years. In a Christian rehab, that's 84% actually don't go on to they don't go back, you know. And when I thought that was quite a massive, do you know what I mean? I've seen the effect it's had on other people as well as myself, you know, obviously my own testimony, but the effect it's had on other people, it's quite phenomenal. But yeah, I totally see what you're saying, Alex, 1,000,000%. You know, we've got all, you know, a lot of the churches have sold out, unfortunately, and it even states that in the Bible as well. There'll be a lot of, false prophets. There'll be a lot of, people turning away from the faith in the end times, because I think it's so obvious at this stage when we're looking at, say, Hollywood, for example, in the music industry. Just take those two as a prime example of the evil that goes on at the minute. I think it's stepped up a gear the last couple of weeks anyway, isn't it? But it is so clear that these people, that something's happened to them. So, for example, say just Sam Smith, take him as an example, and that Doja Cat or whatever, and you look at him before and then after is something completely insane. Even Miley Cyrus, so what was she, Hannah Montana, on that little, I don't know, it was some show years ago that she was on, and she was like, so she had a following of young girls and whatever, and then when she became a pop star, she was on stage in Next to Nothing, dressed as a baby with a dildo in her hand. Do you know, how can you go from that to that without something happening to them? Do you know what I mean? Spiritually, I mean, like Sam Smith is just one, he's a massive example of it. And they're all pushing the same thing. They're all pushing the they, them pronouns. They're all pushing the transgenderism, which is Baphomet anyway. But look how many disproportionate amount of famous people have got transgender kids. Do you know what I mean? And now you're teaching this in the schools. So God has been removed from the schools completely. And now you've got from age 3, they're teaching them masturbation, good touch, bad touch, which is a groomer's paradise. They're teaching them that you can be the opposite gender if you want, or you can change sex. There are even children in school now, and some people laugh at this, but I see the very twisted sickness of it all. But they're identifying as furries, what they called furries. So they're like cats, foxes, wolves. Now, people will laugh at that and say, oh, that's crazy and whatever else. But that is actually comes from, when you're looking behind all that, it comes from bestiality. It comes from, it's an adult sexual twisted fetishism. And if you type furries into Google, you're going to come up with some very dangerous things. Now, these children are looking into these, and they're also being subjected to pornography and explicit material. And because of what I do, which is obviously safeguarding or trying to safeguard children from it, you wouldn't believe the amount of, and this is going to be disturbing for people. It's not just in school, it's in society as well, but they spend a lot of time in the classroom, right? Child on child abuse. So you've got these children acting out what they're seeing in society, which is, you know, that we were on about it earlier, you know, that whole 60s thingy, which I thought when I woke up, it was a rebellious movement. I didn't realize that actually we were stepping right into where we needed to be in terms of tolerance on everything. You know, love is love, which is a paedophile slogan. Love is love. Age is just a number, and all of that sorts of things. And we've twisted. You had Pi and NAMBLA, the paedophile information exchange in the 70s, and we've twisted it right in now to the point where in school in the UK now we have a mandatory. It's mandatory. This is what we took the Welsh government to court over this 2 years. It's mandatory in all 4 countries. We all signed up to it, for the 4 UK countries in 2017. And it's an American education. And instead of when we were in school, we would have had a standalone lesson, perhaps, right? Maybe once an hour a week or something, which you could be pulled out of. This education is brand new. So what it is it's called the whole school approach. So it's within every lesson. So you've got the LGBTQI stuff, you've got the gender bending, you've got the sexualization of children, and I mean sexualization of children, good touch, bad touch, all of this sort of stuff is in there, and you cannot remove them from it. It's mandatory, right? And this was our fight against the government, Welsh government. So in Wales, we legislated it first before we had the lesson content. They had the lesson content in England, Scotland, and Ireland, but they legislated it in Wales first, right? So we had to raise £100,000, right, for a judicial review. And that was like through blood, sweat and tears, mind, because they were holding back. They were threatening the claimant, saying that the government was saying, we're going to come, if you don't pay us by so-and-so, we're going to come around and take your settees and stuff like that. It was ridiculous. But we had 5 claimants go in against them. Basically, what we went in on, because we knew we weren't going to be able to get this education out, right? We know it's too big for that. It's come from the UN and the World Health Organization, right? So we went in on, we want our parental opt-out, right? But we lost that case, right? And I tell you what, I don't even think people are aware of this, and I wasn't until this case happened. So we went in on that, and even though we proved it was a global rollout, so there are bits of that we can use in our favor, even though we lost the case. In the case law that was produced from it, section 41 and 42 with exemptions we can use in our favor, but we lost, and they said this, and this is you can go and read the judgment, right? They said, you haven't got parental. So we went on a parental rights issue. You haven't got parental rights. You've got parental responsibility. So we're doing it anyway, basically. And the only thing you can do is homeschool your children. So in Wales, our 4 core mandatory subjects were English, Welsh, science, and maths. Reasonable. They've been our 4 core subjects for a long time in Wales. Now, for this education, science and maths are no longer mandatory. They still do them, but they're not mandatory. But sex education is. Biology, which tells you the bits you're going to need to know, really, do you know what I mean, about as far as you need to go with it, anatomy and stuff like that, that is no longer mandatory. But teaching your kids that they can touch themselves if they want to is mandatory. This is how crazy this has become. And because of this, so for example, getting a bit deep here now, obviously working with kids, she's a criminologist, and her, she specializes in institutionalized child sex abuse, right? So there was a piece of this went around 251 schools in England back in 2018, right? And this piece of work came from a package called All About Me, and it was for 4 and 5-year-olds, right? And basically what it said is touching, they called it self-stimulation, which is basically masturbation, but they just wanted a thingy, the name up. So it's self-stimulation, and it's we all do it, and it's a good thing to do, but not do it in front of people. Maybe do it on your own when you're in the bed. This is for 4 to 5-year-olds, mind, this piece of work. Maybe do it on your own, it's just like picking your nose. Do it on your own, away from people. Now, what we've done there is, number one, we've programmed all of those kids to touch themselves. Right? Some kids just do it anyway, but you've just programmed every single kid in our classroom to touch themselves. And number 2, you've just programmed them away from what we call a barrier to disclosure. So when kids are being abused, they'll act in a certain way, right? And then we can look at that and be, a cause for concern and maybe investigate it. But if all the kids are touching themselves now, because that's what you've taught them to do, we can't distinguish which ones are being abused. Do you see what I mean? So this is a groomer's paradise. It really, really is, because what they're teaching it, and this, you can have a look at the framework, the World Health Organization framework and the UN framework. Good touch, bad touch, listen to your body, know what feels good. This is for 4 to 5 years old. And anyone who understands the grooming process will know that it's very really violent, because if an abuser came in with a hammer and hit the child would scream, raise the alarm or whatever. They want that trust from the child. So when we're saying we're programming children to only think is bad if it hurts, that's a very, very, very dangerous road to go down, because it doesn't. So they'll go in and tickle does that feel nice? Yes. Does that feel nice tickling your arm? Yes. When you tickle below, does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. So how is that child going to know it's really dangerous? And the things that, like I say, we've got 4-year-olds doing things to other 4-year-olds. We've got teenagers doing things to younger siblings. And I get it a lot, because they know what I'm doing and they don't know what to do in that situation. A lot of the time it's a parent who's got 2 siblings and one sibling is, because they're exposed to that explicit material, which will happen. It's exactly the same. It's very easy to program a child. We all know this on this panel. You're much easier to program a child and influence a child, brainwash a child, than it is for an older person. So when you've got putting things in front of them that you can be a girl if you want, you can be a boy if you want, you can do this and that, they are acting on that. And because there are so many children on the spectrum, a lot of those are being influenced by it. They already feel like they don't fit in or whatever, so they're holding on to this. And then this, once you say that you're trans or you're this and you're that or whatever, it becomes popular. They're encouraged to do it, and schools are doing things that parents are not. There was a case here in the Rhondda back a couple of years ago where they socially transitioned a child. I say socially, so basically the child wanted to be a girl, and they gave him or it might have been a girl to a boy, gave her a boy's name and let her wear trousers inside the classroom. The parents had no idea about it. When they found out about it, they kicked off then, and there was a big story about it. But the things that are going on in the classroom are so highly dangerous. It's quite alarming, to be honest. So this is why we're fighting tooth and nail, because obviously this has come from America. This has come from 3 principles. That one, queer theory. The other one is we're sexual from birth. And that would have to be a whole other thing. There was experiments done by a man called Alfred Kinsey back in the 1940s. Basically, they were sexually abusing children as young as 2 months old. And it's in a science publication. It's in all documented science. And that is what the WHO and the UN are using. They even state it in their framework. The WHO actually say we're sexual from inside the womb. So therefore, we should be acting out sexually because we are, because we're sexual from birth, based on paedophiles abusing infants as young as 2 months old. It's quite very difficult for people to come to terms with, but I can always put the information and everything on you if anyone wants it. So have a look at the UN stuff, have a look at the World Health Organization stuff. And there's plenty, the Public Child Protection Wales, who I work very, very closely with. All is on there. But like I say, it's all in the UK, So from that is pure evil. That is, because from that point of view here, and I can see it happening, it's normalizing this, and it's desensitizing people to it as well. See, people have become so desensitized that they don't even realize what's going on. And it's all under this banner of tolerance and inclusion. And, I don't know if you either of you saw, I know Webby's been kicked off or here he comes, he might be back on now. There was a TED talk a couple of years ago about paedophilia and about changing it to a sexual orientation. And I think a lot of your listeners probably know this anyway. And they call them MAPS, which is minor attracted person. So we're already at that stage where people they're not aware of it. They don't think, or they like to think that it wasn't happening, but it is. We're at that stage now where paedophiles are sort of, you know, you can't say anything against them. You've got to be tolerant of everyone. You know, it's not their fault they were born like it, is the you know, what they'll try and say is the mantra of it. And we're in very, very, very dangerous territory. And obviously, you know, I'm not saying that both my parents were teachers. My grandfather was a teacher. My auntie's a teacher. I'm not saying that all teachers are groomers. What I am saying is that a groomer is going to go to a place where they have access to children. So that's going to be in all institutions. You know, you've got care homes, schools, youth leaders of, you know, sports teams, whatever, you know. You're back, Web.
The teachers who aren't groomers, the teachers who aren't groomers are the ones that get out the job. They force them out the job. It's the same as if you're not going to use the they, them pronouns and all that rubbish. You were talking about furries. Schools are putting litter trays in the bathrooms. That's encouraging mental illness. If my daughter came home, and believe me, Kat, my daughter used to think she was Pikachu when she was 6 or 7, but I wouldn't have let her become Pikachu. You know, it's. I don't.
But it's encouraging mental illness.
Yes, it is.
And you know, like when I was younger, I wouldn't say to somebody. So it's exactly the same thing, and I always give this as an example. We wouldn't say to somebody who's suffering with anorexia, yeah, you're a fatty, go and get liposuction and stop eating. We wouldn't encourage that. We would recognize that they've got a mental illness and treat it as such. But these kids can't read and write, a lot of them.
No, well, this is where you see what the religions are doing as well. Everything is okay. Everything's on the table. You can do whatever you want. You said it yourself earlier, do what thou wilt. Well, Sodom and Gomorrah was exactly what this society is now striving for. Everything's okay. Well, that means society gets flipped, turned upside down, and then all of a sudden it's normal to do things like walk into somebody's house and shit in the litter tray. That's normal, is it?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, no, my cat wouldn't be happy if somebody come in and shat in a tray.
I shouldn't laugh, really, but yeah, it is. It's actually, to even have this conversation is nuts, isn't it? But it is actually going on. You know, there are people who tell me. I went up to see a friend last year, and her son, who was 15 at the time, he was upstairs, and she called him down. She said, "Tell Kat about the school." This was the school that my father used to teach in. Now, my dad gave up teaching a long time ago anyway, so it was before all this. But he said they had a room. I couldn't believe this. I was like, what? Especially for, you know, a safe space, because obviously we live in a very snowflake society at the minute, but for kids who identified as wolves and dragons. I said, what? He said, yeah, honestly, anyone who feels, and, you know, if they want a safe space to wherever you go through now, and I'm like, what's happened to and you're right, what you say, Paul, all the good teachers have gone, which is a, I don't blame them, but I'm worried for the kids who were there, because what are they left with? Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I don't blame these teachers. I've known a few to walk out. I don't know if you're aware of the case in Ireland. What was his name? Enoch. His name was Enoch, actually. Enoch Byrne, and he was a Christian teacher, and he's been in prison for 400 days because he got suspended from the college he worked at for not affirming somebody's gender, or I don't know, status of a they, them, or whatever, using their pronouns. So by his faith, he's like, I'm not doing it. 400 days he spent in jail because he kept going. What it was, they suspended him, and he could have just walked off at that point and got another job, but it was his point. He was like, no, and he kept going back to the college and standing there saying, no, this is my job. I love my job. I should be teaching these kids. So in the end, it ended up in court, and he did 400 days in one of the roughest prisons in America, in Ireland, right? He came out. He was released about 3 weeks ago. He went straight back up to the college to do the same thing, and they arrested him again. But I think he's done it to prove a point, because actually that story now has gone pretty viral, and they were talking about it on some show in America, which had like I don't know, 2 million subscribers or something, you know, some news channel over there. So I think that was his point. I'm standing here and I'm doing this, because he could just go home and shut up and just get another job. He was being paid or whatever. But his point was, no, this is insane. I'm going to keep bringing it up until, but that's ridiculous. Being called, because he wouldn't call them a they, them or whatever. He was suspended from his job, and now he's obviously, you know, he's not allowed to teach there now. But this has happened a few times. He's not an isolated case.
Well, this is where we come. You went to court to try and stop these kids being groomed. I said to you off air, after working with sex offenders for 15 years, what that education system is doing through the curriculum being pushed is no different to grooming. Absolutely, you're grooming children into being whatever they want to be, instead of but well-balanced children growing into adults.
Yeah, and they're teaching them to be promiscuous.
Yeah, we've spoken a few times, me and Alex, about the education system. I believe it was the FBI or CIA that did a study on the education system in America in the 50s, I think it was, where they followed a group of children from the age of 5. So they assessed them at the age of 5, and something like 98% of these 5-year-olds in this class were genius potential. By the age of 10, that had more than halved. And then by the age of 15, you had round about 10, 12% who could possibly, and I'm possibly even over the top there, it might be less. But they said the education system works. It does what it's meant to do. It doesn't teach us anything. It teaches kids what to think instead of how to think. You know, you can be a wolf. But why would you want to be a wolf? Because wolves don't live like we do. So if you want to be a wolf, what do you want? Why? Now, there is an interesting aspect me and Alex have discussed before we came on the show about these kids who think that the furries, and, you know, there is a potential that there's abuse going on in the home, because they might, you know, the parents might love the cat or the dog more than what they do the child. So the child, you know, retreats into that of acting like an animal, hoping to get the same kind of recognition. You know, that again, it's grooming us into what it is that you want from society. So weak people now, weak men who just won't stand up. I mean, you see yourself, Kat. How many times have you studied people shouting and pointing things out, and there's no men there doing? I mean, I've seen loads of women round in your groups. The only ones who are doing anything, you know, these are the people who are concerned about the kids. Women love the kids. These are mama bears. What are you doing to our kids? And then the question is, where are the fellas? Where are the dads? You know, I'm looking to get one.
The thing is, Paul, they've done a number on them. They've done a real number on them. When you think about initially the breakdown of the family unit, because, you know, a couple of generations ago, fathers would be up the school kicking doors off hinges. Do you know what I mean? And saying, what are you doing? Whereas now, I know what you're saying. And don't get me wrong, there is a small minority of men who are with us. Do you know what I mean? They're flat out on it, you know. But they've done a number on it. They've done a number on the family. That's what they've done. They've done a real number on the family for a long time. They broke down the family unit so that they could control society, because they had to take the children, you know, and the easiest way to do is for the state to bring them up, as you say. I think I've seen that study you're on about as well, and you know, it's really unsurprising. But if that was back in the 50s, Paul, what's it like now? Because you know, at least they could read, you know, they were a lot better than what they are now. These kids, a lot of them, they having trouble reading and writing, but they know all about sex. You know, in the older kids, well, I say older kids, these are still babies, in my opinion. The 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds have such a promiscuous sex education, right? They're being lied to. Parents are being lied to and saying it's all about safeguarding. It's nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing to do with it. It's teaching them how to be promiscuous. Some of the things that are in these resources, right? There was one where they teach them basically about pornography and, you know, BDSM, and that some people like to be tied up and whipped and whatever, right? They're teaching them this. They're even teaching them in some places that the third-party organizations, unregulated, unvetted, that are coming in and teaching this stuff, right? How to choke, these are for 12 to 13-year-olds, how to choke your partner safely during sex. Anal sex as a means of contraception. Honestly, if Grace was in the school, and obviously she's been home educated, so she only did nursery, and I took her out at age 4, and they weren't this, it was just knowing the education system as it was, and the best decision I've ever made. If Grace was in school, I would be that mum. Sorry, Jesus, I would be that mum where I would be at the school kicking the door off its hinges and grabbing somebody by the throat if my daughter was exposed to anything like that. Because this is desensitizing those children to think it's okay. And you would have seen this, Paul, as well, right? And it breaks my heart how young girls dress now, and I mean young. 12. It's not their fault, because society has told them, and you know, this is how you, but some of these girls, they're in little tiny dresses and faces full of makeup, and they're still babies. There's no need for any of this, but because society has done this to them, they're running with it. And then the parents, this is what I mean by desensitized, the parents taking photos of them, oh, look how beautiful, and I'm like, they don't understand the dangers of what's gone on in society, because, you know, last year, 300 million children were groomed online. 300 million children in one year. So if that many kids were groomed online, how many groomers are there? And this is the thing I bang my head against, because pornography is the one thing the one thing I do a lot on, the dangers of pornography, obviously, right? Because I understand that is what can create, and it does, by the way, create sexual offending, right? So now we've got children exposed to explicit material from very, very young, because they're given a phone at age 5 or 6 or whatever. It doesn't matter how many blocks on there, they've seen pornography if they got a phone. Yeah, the addiction can kick in pretty young as well then. Do you know what I mean? So you've got younger and younger kids who are going out sexually abusing. There was one the other day, 16-year-old boy raped a mum walking through the street the other day, just because they're being exposed to it. Look, and it's wiring their brain. They're looking at all this. Pornography is violent 90% of the time. It's degrading, right? So what they get an idea of it, and they get addicted to it. Their brains are being wired a certain way, and they think this stuff is normal. So this is why, and this is where you end up in child pornography as well. So just like a chemical addiction, what do you need to do with a chemical addiction? I know this because I used to be addicted to cocaine, right? You have that first hit, and then you build tolerance to it. So you need more of it to be able to get that high, right? Exactly. Pornography runs across the same neural pathway as chemical addiction, and pornography can be an addiction. So what happens is you get used to, you build tolerance to it, and it becomes boring. It's not getting you aroused anymore. So what you need to do is look for more shocking stuff, harder stuff. And this is when you enter the realms of child pornography. These people don't wake up and go, oh, I'm going to be a child, you know, I'm going to view. And this is why people don't get it when, like, their mate down the road, who's just a normal guy, is being caught with loads of images and whatever on their devices. Probably because they've watched so much pornography, they've become so desensitized, they need something stronger. And there's a demand for it now, isn't there? And that's why we have child trafficking, you know, and we go into the realms of that then. So I understand how, but then the sexual revolution, liberation movement, I was saying to Alex earlier when you jumped off, I thought that was a rebellious movement. I did. Not that I was around in the 60s, but I mean, when I woke up and I was doing my research and whatever, I thought, oh, they were rebelling against, oh, I was so wrong. They walked straight into it. Society walked straight into Satan's plan there. Do you know what I mean? And since then, they've chipped it away, like I was saying earlier. And now we're at that realm where paedophilia is becoming pretty normal. It's disgusting.
No, I completely agree. The stuff that
I can't hear you a minute, Paul, because you're breaking. Sorry, go on. Say that again. You were breaking up then, you were, love. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. I'm having a few issues this end. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Right. Yeah, I said that if I'd have had internet porn at 13, they'd have had me. I'd been lost forever. That's why now that 13, 12, well, you've got it from 7 to 12. are being taught this stuff, and then they've got access. Most kids, I mean, I do know parents who are very tight on, you know, the lad that 11's just been given his and that he can't look at things, you know, his mates will be able to. His mates will have no problem accessing it. And
yeah,
that's the issue go, because if promoting stuff, they're going to see an authority figure saying that they don't. So this is now starts to change society. We're talking about just off the 50s and the 60s, they brought in a different type of music. Then they brought in loads of drugs and things like that. You know, we said off further, a psychiatrist, I once remember reading an article, he said, in 35 years, I've never been able to change a man's psyche better than a piece of music can change it. One piece of music that changes from going, you know, from being sad to being happy and things like that. So when we get to a school, an authority that's doing this, I mean, the thing that I draw a comparison with, Kat, because you went to court with this stuff, I think that there's an issue because it was the government I mean, I don't actually know who were the, as claimants, I don't know who you actually took to court, whether it was the education system or whatever, but if it's public policy, this is where people are making a lot of mistakes with utility companies. There's no point suing a utility company who's forcing smart meters because it's now public policy. So the government are telling the utility companies, you must have all these smart meters in by this date. Now, if that's public policy, just government said.
Lost you again, Paul. I can't hear you, love. I've lost you again.
I'm having these issues, Kat. We've lost Alex. Can you hear me?
Right, I can hear you now. Yeah, that's it. We took the Welsh ministers, we did. And the reason we did it, we knew we weren't going to win, but we had to, because hardly anyone knew about it. They still don't. I mean, a lot more people know about it now. But at that time, they didn't. So doing all the fundraising, and myself and Lou, obviously at Liberty Tactics, we did 3 36-hour podcastathons to raise money. And, you know, Darren walked 140 miles up to the mid-Wales. They did mountain walks. They did skate-a-thons. We did everything to raise that money. But the most important thing what we were doing at the time was exposing it and raising awareness. Because, like I say, most people had no idea that it was even in the school. And a lot of people still don't know. Do you know what I mean? So, again, it's like an education for everyone, because there's a lot of people though now, in all fairness, because I've been watching the home educator, because I've been a home educator for 10 years, I've seen how it's increased anyway over the years. Do you know what I mean? Like, so when COVID happened, there was a massive shift in it. It was already before then, even since I took grade like 10 years ago, it was already like, it was like an 18% increase back the year before, when I took her out. So I was watching it slowly over the years. When COVID happened, obviously massive, significant increase again, but then with the sex education as well. So it's becoming an issue now. So whereas before home education wasn't, you know, the government wasn't particularly that bothered about it because it was only, wasn't big enough for, for it to affect them, but now it is. Do you know what I mean? So they're trying to make it a bit difficult for people to home educate their children now, because they're losing their funding, obviously, because they get funding per child. I can't remember how much it is. I think it's like 4,000 or 5,000 or 3,000 per child per year, 6,000 if it's a special needs child. So they're losing their funding there. But the biggest thing is they're losing their grip, because the people who are not sending their children to school, for the most part, are aware of what's going on. They're aware of the agendas going on. So their children are not subject to it. They're not exposed to it as much as the children in school. And they know, we know that the reason for this education system in the first place was so that they can change society. They can, you know, they can change society's attitudes and behaviors. So if they're losing their grip on it, it makes it a bit more difficult, you know, for them to keep a grip on it, type of thing. That's my view anyway. That's why I think they're making it a bit more difficult for those. And, you know, it's perfectly legal. It's perfectly legal to educate your children at home. But when I took Grace, it was very simple. Now they're sort of trying to hold on to hold on to children. They've been, I think, probably they've been told by higher up to sort of try and talk them round and, you know, try and keep them in school or whatever. But it's not working, because most people who I've spoken to who home educate their children, they love it. And I say it's the best thing that I ever did. I've made some really silly decisions since Grace was born, but one of the best decisions was taking her out of school and home educating her. You know, she's not exposed. I mean, she is, because society is the way it is, but she's nowhere near as exposed to, you know, the brainwashing and the agendas as they're pushing on these poor kids in school, which it is having a huge impact on them, real big impact on them. It's quite frightening what they're doing. And, you know, when we think these kids can't even read and write, some of them, but, you know, it's all right to teach them how to give blowjobs. It's just absolutely, it's insane. It's insane.
Bonkers.
Yeah.
That's absolutely bonkers. I can't believe it.
I know.
What happened to you, Alex?
I think it's signal. It's the same gremlin that's affected you, pal.
Yeah, I don't even know if you can hear me still yet.
Yeah,
we can. You're all right now.
But one of the things I just say in response to this problem is that the issue that we have with all these issues, not just this paedophilia one in schools, is policy. It's all driven by policy. So once they kind of get kicked into something like United Nations or WEF, once they agree these treaties, they just implement them at a policy level, and then it's very, very difficult to shift it. And one of the only ways to tackle it, again, as we said before, is people power, which means that individual parents have to complain about the situation affecting their individual children and relentlessly don't settle for that, basically. Because if we don't do it at that level, and if concerned parents, I mean, they'll fine you now if you take your kid out of school to go on holiday for a week in term time. They'll take money off you. They'll do all that. They'll penalise you for being a bad parent, apparently, by not letting them go into their indoctrination camps. But when it's all the stuff that they want to peddle, you just go, yeah, just shovel it into my mouth. Just shovel it in. And it's all driven by policy. So because it's enshrined in policy, it just gets enforced because it's policy. So we've got to reverse the policy, basically. And that means you've got to have adult parents of vulnerable children saying, what do you think you're doing teaching this crap to my kids? That's the bottom line.
And we have got some of those. We have got some. But you're right, we need it it needs to be from, you know, a lot of people. But we have got some, you know, really good people out there who are willing to go in and just flat out. And we have managed to win, like I said earlier, you know, in the case law, even though we lost the parental opt-out, there are bits of that case law that we can use to our advantage. So we did have one case with a mum who's got a severely mentally disabled little boy. You know, he's got autism, he's got dyspraxia, this little boy is fed through a tube. It's not because he can't eat. There's nothing wrong with his digestive system. That all the experts in the country don't know what's wrong with him. It's a psychological thing. He just woke up one day and thought he was going to choke and he won't eat, so he's fed through a tube. And they wanted to teach him this. Now, this little boy, when he becomes dysregulated, already thinks he's a cat. Genuinely thinks he's a cat. Right? He's really, really. So, mum has been superb. We went through an education tribunal and everything, right? And it took us a year, though. It took us a year with, like you were saying, battling, going in, having meetings, this, that, and the other, to actually remove him from that class. It took year and a half to get him to do it. And even then, but you are right. I mean, she was brilliant, in all fairness, to go through all that. You know, she was really good. You know, she was at the end of the day, but how many other children, you know, he's obviously been removed at the times when they're doing this sort of stuff, right? Because it will affect him. But all the other kids in the class, do you know what I mean? So when they get out on this was my point about opting out and stuff anyway. As much as we went in on that, we knew we weren't going to win it. But even so, if you're opting your child out, when they get together on the playground anyway, they're going to talk about it anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it still has that impact on them. So unless you do it, like you say, Alex, with numbers, like if you had like quite a few in the same area or even in the same school going up, but she was on her own there. She was the only mum in that class, in that school, I believe, that actually went up and did something about it. You know, a lot of people just, you know, they have a bit of a moan on Facebook and this, that, and the other on social media, but there's not many people with enough balls, metaphorically, of course, being a mum, to go up and actually do something about it, which is a massive, massive shame because, you know, it's just a massive disservice to these kids.
So I've been I'm talking about tomorrow, and I'm going to meet my friend, and she's got twins. So they're at secondary school. They've not been there very long. And most parents are aware, who've got any kind of background awareness, that they're introducing this sneakily into different curriculums. So all kids are getting exposed to it. But what she does, the way she's brought her kids up, they're very disruptive in class. But not in the typical sense where you say, oh, look at that rebellious child. They question the teacher. They don't. Because they've been brought up authentic, they can't tolerate the garbage that they're seeing, and they speak out against it naturally. They don't have to be like trained or programmed to do that. It's just because they're brought up so real. And I think all these artificial environments, they're so impoverished, it's ridiculous. And I think they're so pathetically childish that anyone who's bringing up the kids now in a solid way, those kids are going to start getting rebellious, because who wants to sit around listening to utter drivel? And I think the kids themselves protest against it if they're brought up the right way. And I think we're going to have more kids creating a big furore and then being backed up by the parents, because then the parent can go, it's not my opinion, it's not me claiming I'm the parent or guardian, it's my kids saying, I'm going to school and what is this drivel?
There's two arguments.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, in Wales, what's that, Lev?
I'm just saying there's two things that always jump out about homeschooling. You always get the people who because they can't afford to not work, they need that as a babysitter, so they're willing to justify or at least try and justify what's going on. And the other thing is that when the people who I do know who's homeschooled, they have an issue about friends. You know, they don't make friends and stuff like that. So how did you compensate? How did you reconcile with that, Kat? Did she have friends anyway and that type of thing? Or
yeah, it's actually a bit of a myth, to be honest with you, Paul, right? Because this was one reason why I hesitated initially to take her out, because I was thinking, all right, the educational stuff, not a problem. What about, because I always believed, and I don't know if this was obviously put into my head falsely, like everything else, that, home educated kids are weird and unsocialized. It's absolute nonsense. As long as you take them, so in my head, when I grew up, I thought home educated, I didn't know anyone that was home educated. And if they were, I thought like a tutor came round to their house for 6 hours a day and they sat at the table and done it like that. But it's not. You go out places, right? So we go to, you know, castles or manors or beaches or wherever, you know, we meet, because there are other home educated kids as well. That's what we did. And what they do, they're far more, there are places that headhunt, organizations who headhunt home educated children or children that have been home educated to work with them, because they know they got better communication skills and better socialization skills. And when you put this into, if you put it like this, right, I know from being in school, right, you're not allowed to socialize in the classroom, right? You can do it on your break, but you get told you got to listen, right? Because I was always moved. I was outside in the corridor. I was always moved because I was a chatterbox. I was always disruptive and whatever else, right? You're not allowed to communicate. And even in a classroom full of 30 kids, the only other age is your own age, other than the teacher who's an adult. But when you're home educated, you go out and about and you communicate in all times, whoever you meet in, whether it's people in the shop, whether it's the workers in the cafe, whether it's a 90-year-old woman sat on a park bench, they communicate and socialize. And all other home educated children, they'll bring their littler kids, they'll bring their older kids. So they constantly commute, and they're allowed to do it. We're allowed to. So that's what I mean. So it is actually a massive myth about, and that's obviously, you've got to do the work as a parent. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to home educate my kid and keep him in the house 24/7. Do you know what I mean? You'd be doing a disservice to him then. Do you know what I mean? But doing the right thing by taking them out, giving them the tools, and, you know, just taking them places and whatever, automatically they socialize and communicate very, very effectively with different ages, you know, as well, not just your own age. That's why they're headhunted in a lot of certain, not, you know, but I've read that so many times that they do headhunt home educated children because they know their communication and socialization skills are better than those in school, especially now. So that's how you get around it. Yeah. But going back to what Alex said, right, you know, you were on about the children disrupting in the classroom. That's exactly what is needed, right? Because children's right in Wales here are law, right? Children, and I don't know if you two know this, they now have sexual rights the same as adults, right? And this was obviously to bring in the gender. So they're saying all these children got these sexual rights and blah, 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 and children's rights are law. Okay, then, well, if that child is telling you, and you are right, the older they are, the more they can deal with the nonsense, right? So they're telling you, I don't want to sit in this classroom because I'm offended by you trying to teach me a load of nonsense. Okay, then, well, let's look at their rights then. They are telling you, not me. They're telling you they don't want to sit there and do that. And this is why I think, no, this is definitely why they've brought it in for the 3-year-olds first, right? Because it's far, you know, like a 14-year-old's going to be like, what are you a cat for? What are you on about? You can change gender. They're not going to fall for it because it's quite new in that respect. But a 3-year-old, if you can brainwash them that quickly to think it's normal, then by the time they get to high school, they're already indoctrinated into this anyway. So that's why they've gone for the younger kids first. And the older kids, most of them, a lot of them are like, you are right. Thankfully, they're not having none of it. Do you know what I mean? Some of them are because they're getting sucked into it or whatever. But a lot of them are like, I don't even want to learn. Like, parents tell me what their children, their teenagers are saying, and they're coming home saying, I don't want to go in there because it's just a load of crap. We're not learning anything. It's just all this like inclusivity, and we have to sit through these all day assemblies with all, you know, all this. We don't want to do it, which is a good thing. So we do need more kids to, not that we should put it on them, but if they naturally like that anyway, brilliant, because they will if that teacher is about to teach a lesson of pornography or BDSM and you've got 2 or 3 kids in that classroom making a fuss and disrupting, brilliant, because you disrupt the lesson then. Do you know what I mean? Where they would have taught it before, now they perhaps can't do it because you've got those disruptive kids in the classroom. It's a great idea. And the older ones, some of them will do it, which is a good thing. It's just the littler ones who don't realize, do you know what I mean? And they're just being brainwashed over and over. It's dangerous.
Yeah, well, you were saying before as well in 2009 about the vaccines, and that's when your awareness really kicked in that there was something wrong. I do think vaccines are a really pertinent thing, even more so even than sexual education, because kids are vulnerable. So, like from early on, many parents might not have had that conversation with the kids already, not knowing how to tackle it, and yet the school comes in with its size 12s. But I think things like body autonomy can be taught very young to kids. Just like you can say, don't talk to strangers. You know, don't talk to strangers who do approach you. Don't let nurses at schools put strange needles in your arm. It's a bit different because for people for kids to be exposed to anything sexual, they probably wouldn't be in practice unless they were violated. So it's quite abstract for a child in a way. And if they've not already been exposed to those issues, which is exactly the point because they shouldn't be, it's sometimes a bit hard. So one of the ways to do it for me, like my friend, absolutely vigilant about vaccines because her 2 of them, basically both twins, but the girl, because they're non-identical, she basically was given a meningitis vaccine, which gave her meningitis and she nearly died. So from that point on, she had warrant to be able to say to the authorities, look, my child's had an adverse reaction to this vaccine. And then she also drummed it into the kids in a healthy way. Look, yeah, you nearly died, and we're going to take care of your body, and you be very responsible about what you decide to allow in your body, because you can make the choice. So even though you shouldn't have to make kids so aware of predators out there and school authorities, part of your diligence now is to train your kid and teach them about their own body autonomy, their own safety, just like you would about don't talk to strangers. And I think it's better to focus on non-sexual matters with the kids themselves and give them good grounding in other areas, so that they're actually on the money, that they don't respect arbitrary authority that just tells them, jump, you say how high, but teach them to question, because there's not enough of that going on. And of course, that's what they're trying to knock out of us. We need to get kids to ask questions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, what they're doing in schools, and this absolutely really riles me up, just jumping onto the vaccine part of it, because we know that in school they get vaccines as well. You've got the HPV for a teenager, right? And you've got the tetanus and whatever for the older teenager. But what they've been doing, because they come with a consent form, right? What they've been doing, and like parents have come to me and I'm like, I can't do anything from that point of view. So what's happened, there was one last year or the year before that come to me, and he was fuming, this father. He knew about vaccines. He hadn't long found out about it. So his child, I think, was about 13 at the time. So when it came home for the HPV, he signed it no, right? But it's in the bottom of that thingy, there's a little small writing that basically says, because of Gillick competence, right, the child can override that decision, right? So what had happened is he had put a consent form in. At the day that it was due, they didn't even go into school. They said no, and they didn't send the child in. But a couple of days later, some nurses from the NHS came round and thought to play sort of catch up on the ones that didn't go in for it. And what had happened is they basically scared this child who didn't know. The father had only just found out about it. So he was like, no, but the child had no awareness of it, obviously, right? Because he'd only just found out. So what they had done is basically said, look, if you don't have this, you could get the human papillomavirus is very severe, and it can give you cervical cancer and it can kill you. So that child decided to have that vaccine there and then on the spot. And while the father had come to me and said, is there anything, he was fuming, absolutely fuming. Is there anything I can do? I said, no, because there is a clause on there that says the child with Gillick's competence can override that decision. And that's what happened. So legally, there was no way out from it, So you are absolutely right. You have got to, once you find out about these things, doesn't matter when it is, luckily for me, Grace has always known, because I was pregnant. So from as little as I can remember, she was only about 4 and she was sat on the settee. And at the time I didn't really understand about CBeebies or whatever. And she was watching, what's the doctor's name? Dr. Ranj or whatever his name is. Right. And all I heard him say, I was like, just pottering about. I heard him say something about the MMR vaccine. And I stopped and I looked at her. And she just said something like, it's all right, Mum, I know it's poison. And she was only 4. So she hadn't been in the school, she hadn't been in that, thingy anyway. But if she was, she would know exactly what to say and she would be firm about it. I'm not having that. I know how dangerous it is. But if children don't know, they can be frightened. Really, they're basically being told they could die if they don't have it. So then they're overriding their parents' decision to say no. So we do have to... Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have to inform our children as much as we can. Do you know what I mean? Without sort of massively overcomplicating things or whatever. But we do need to inform them, because the school can come in, like you say, with their big size 12s and just everything you've done, they can just undo it, Yeah.
And another thing I'd say is as well, we know it's like fully formed adults, the kind of things that have been going on with this agenda right across the board. And the point is, a child's got the same right as a nurse or anybody else to say, this thing you're going to put inside of me now, what's in it?
Yeah.
So that's the next thing. Like, you teach any person, right, to say, oh, this medication you're giving me, what's in it? Even if it's a painkiller, what's in it? And you thought, well, the person might be allergic to penicillin, so you've got to do your due diligence. What's in this?
Yeah.
What's in this? And teaching kids to ask those questions. What's in this? You want to give this to me? What's in this? But again, we don't do enough of that. So I do think it comes back to us as well in our families to really drive it home and bring kids up properly, compared to all these people who are they're just letting it slide, and their kids are going to go down the tubes, unfortunately. And I don't know if we can afford to. We can try and change on a policy level. We can try and challenge the school. We can try and do all this stuff, or we can just make sure that our own kids and those, not just your own kids, but your nephews, nieces, grandkids, we've got to build that resilience in our own families of origin, so that we can say, yeah, we're solid. We're asking the right questions. We're doing our due diligence.
Agreed.
Don't forget they've got the nasal spray. That's the one that comes in November, December. They're giving nasal spray to the primary school kids, so they're still getting a vaccine, but without it being injected. So I saw. I'm not even sure if it was one of your posts, Kat, but there was a back to school form for parents to sign, and on signing it, the small print said that on signing this, you allow the health centre in the school to perform vaccinations. So if you just sign a back to work form without reading it, your signature allowed that. Now, if you don't sign it, is there a presumption? This is what people don't understand. Is there a presumption? Because it's interesting, Kat, because we're taught to register our kids, because they're our property, remember? So anything you create or co-create is your property. Once we register that property, it's no longer ours. That's why it was interesting when you said that you don't have parental rights, you have responsibilities.
That's because we signed them away, basically.
They're allowing you to look after their property, just like the DVLA does, just like the land registry does. So it's interesting because as parents, us going to the school, that's going to create friction, which the police will turn up and deal with because of the legislation. It'll be interesting if the kids start going, no. And it's interesting.
That's what needs to happen.
If you've got the children with the mental capacity to do that, I am fortunate that I do know some kids who can think still. I've had a recent chat with an 18-year-old who come up to me trying to sell me energy, trying to swap me energy. And after an hour stood with me, he went, he says, I know what you mean. What are you talking about? I said, so I don't want to change. He went, no, I don't blame you. And he's only 18-year-old, this lad. So it's not that
that's prompting.
Think it's they're not given the information. They're not given the right information, and I think that's what I picked up from what you do, Kat, is that you can't unsee the information. You can disagree, but you can't unsee it.
No, you can't. That's the thing. You really can't. It's there and there, and that's what we have to keep doing, is just showing them the information and hoping. I tell you what I did see though, and I was like, oh, fair play. There was UNICEF had put a post on Facebook, right, saying 14.5 million children in 2023 had no vaccinations at all. And I was like, yes, I know it's not it, right, but we're getting somewhere. But the comment section on there was so uplifting. It was just every single, and I didn't read them all because it was loads. Do you know what I mean? It was hundreds. I didn't see one that was actually for the vaccine industry. All you had was people giving their testimony on the vaccine injured children, or just writing, get good because they're poison and this, that, and the other. Hundreds of comments like that. I was like, fair play, that's good. We're getting somewhere with it. And this is what I always say to people. I know you'll know when there's a low uptake on a certain vaccine because they'll put a fear campaign out. So where you've heard recently about the measles, I don't know if you've seen like the adverts where they're using little kids, because psychologists obviously put these together, right, for for us to pull on heartstrings. They're using children now to coax people into getting the MMR, because there's loads of measles outbreaks here, there and everywhere. But the reason they do that is because there's a lower uptake on the MMR than there has been. So in order for them to get people in and pull them in, they'll do a fear campaign. So anytime you see something on the mainstream news that there's a outbreak of this and an outbreak of that, it's quite, I find it really good, because I know that means that they're faltering on those vaccines. They're not getting as many people in for those vaccines as they should be. And that is why they're having to put these fear campaigns out. They do it all the time, like clockwork. They use exactly the same playbook every single time. And that's how I knew at the beginning of COVID, because I'd researched, vaccines were my main thingy at that point. I'd researched most of the epidemics, I say in inverted commas, and pandemics for 10 years, right? I knew what the playbook was. So when they started prepping the ground, when they were showing people dropping dead in the street and whatever, I knew what they were doing. I knew that was a fear campaign. So I remember having a rant in March 2020 saying, look, I can guarantee you this is not real at all, but what they're going to do is offer a therapeutic in the form of a vaccine, which will cause damage. And that's exactly what happened, because it's not because I got any special knowledge on anything. I mean, I know how the industry works, but it's because they use the same playbook. They don't change it. They even use the same people. Do you know what I mean? It's like, unless you're paying attention, you're not going to know that. But that's exactly what happened. And that's what we're seeing the results of now still.
Well, I said to you before we came on air that I saw Bill Gates' TED Talk in 2009, where he was talking about depopulation. And with a good vaccination program and a good reproductive healthcare program, we can reduce the number of people that it was going to increase, because we had 7 billion back then. And he says by such a date, it will increase to maybe 9. But with a good vaccination program and reproductive healthcare, we can reduce that. He was putting all his billions into vaccines because pandemics was the next thing. And I just laughed at him, because I thought nobody would fall for that. And then when I saw it coming in 2020 and 2021, I'm going, don't fall for this. Don't fall. And all my family, I remember being sat on the end of my bonnet on my car like that, on the end of the driveway, talking to my family who wouldn't let me near the house. Because
it's so sad.
We all thought we were going to die. And I'm going, you need to see these people for what they are. But I was a nutter. So I told you, Kat, I lost more family and friends telling them the gas were free than when I said I'm a Christian. That's how bad it was, because people can't believe that they've been duped. People say that we've obviously been to the moon, because it'll take too many people to be keeping that secret. It would come out. Well, you work hard and pay your bills. You're a creditor in a debt-based economy, yet you talk to act as a debtor. Everybody knows that. So it is easy to fool people when you've gone through an authority system that your parents confirm. Your parents confirm this authority system. I was looking the fact, like, my dad was a very skeptical man with authority. Wasn't an educated academic. My mum was the academic. And my mum taught me how to follow the rules, but, bend them and, don't give them everything, Things like, I always remember one where, as a kid, where I've been having a fight with some lad, and my mum would say, don't you kick them while they're down. And my dad would look at my mum and then look back at me and say, don't let them up, though. He never said to kick them while they were down, but he said, don't let them up unless they've had enough. Now, you don't have that. You don't have straighteners anymore. You call somebody in, they've gone in and got a samurai sword or a gun or something like that nowadays. So everything's changed, those dynamics, and it's coming from authority. It's okay for people to act like this and to do this. And, when we see the prison system being emptied of rapists and murderers, and they're being filled up now with people who put naughty tweets out, we're in trouble. But people just don't care. And I've always said it until that knock on their door comes.
Yeah.
When that comes, that's when...
Yeah, absolutely.
What do I do? Well, do you know what? You can't keep crying about it.
And they want everyone to do something then as well, don't they?
Well, I got when I knew, Kat, when the bills went up April 22, I knew that people would be not able to keep paying. They'd have to look for something. And my emails lit up, my phone lit up, everything lit up saying, what button do I press, Webby? Make it all go away. You missed it. You missed it 10 years ago when we had them in the courts, and we just went in 2016, Kat, they just seemed to go, not interested now. Utility companies, apply for your warrants. Councils, apply for your warrants. Put your paperwork in. You've got them. We'll deal with them if they come to court.
Yeah.
And that was it. Now, if you can't get remedy in court, it forces people, especially people who react more from emotions rather than from thinking. It'll cause civil unrest, which is what they're prepared for, which is what they want.
Yeah.
On a plane has just put that CO2 equals P times something. That was the equation that Bill Gates had. The P was the population, which includes a death panel, but nobody wants to talk about that, Bill Gates says. So all the information is there. You can go and read about it. People who say, well, I didn't know that you weren't meant to pay bills. You can't stand in the courtroom and say that, because ignorance of the law is no excuse. So you've got to stop making excuses about what you haven't done, and you've got to look to what you can do. And if you are waiting for somebody else to do it, then I'm sorry, but you deserve all that comes to you. If you're waiting and waiting and waiting, because when it's not affecting you, it's okay. You can ignore it when it's not affecting you. But when it starts to affect you, what do you do then? Because, you know, I use this analogy a lot, the Martin Niemöller analogy, where he was in Germany when they came for the immigrants, and he said nothing because he wasn't an immigrant. Came for the trade unionists, he said nothing because he's not a trade unionist. Came for the Jews, didn't say anything because I'm not Jewish. Then they came for him, and there was nobody left to say anything because he kept his mouth shut and everybody else kept their mouth shut. So it's time for you to start thinking and then doing, because as we keep saying, you know, I can look at my own scriptures and say, look at how much knowledge I have on these scriptures. Me and Alex sit around and we quaff on for hours and hours about scripture. We have got a decent knowledge base, but if we don't use that in our lives, then it's
exactly
the same.
It is worthless.
Not paying bills, yeah. It's exactly the same as not paying bills, but not knowing why. You know, you stand in a courtroom, why are you not paying this? Because I'm a man.
So and so said, yeah, because I'm a man, yeah.
I have no contract.
That's it. It's not understanding, is it? It's not. It's that not understanding what you're doing. You sort of grabbed a bit from somebody you might have heard on the internet, but no real understanding behind it, and try to run with it. But you've got to put the work in, otherwise it's pointless. You are going to they'll have you for it. You will get caught out. Do you know what I mean? You've got to understand what you're doing, and like you say, Paul, everyone's looking for a silver bullet with us concerned, aren't they? And like I will say it again, I thought your show with Richard Vogel was brilliant, because it was good to see, refreshing to see somebody with someone honest, do you know what I mean, who genuinely does know this system, but are honest about what the outcome could possibly be. There's no point in telling them, go and do this, this is definitely going to work, and then boom, they lose their house because they got a charging order on it from not paying council tax and not knowing why, you know.
Well, that's the point, Kat. I had remedy in that joint gyro credit check. In that check, I had remedy. I went into court with remedy, not argument, and they still won't accept it. So you can't sit around and cry and go, well, that didn't work. Well, go and do something. They won't give me one. Well, have you asked for it? No. So you've not even asked for a joint gyro, and you're saying you can't do it. And then I get the ones who say, I've done this and it doesn't work. What did you send? Oh, I'll send you a picture. And they send me a bank gyro, which means you've got to put payment to it. So you've got people who are thinking they can just write at a 45-degree angle and a different color pen and change it. Now,
and that's going to work.
If that's true that you can do that under the bills of exchange, brilliant. Somebody go and do it, because all I had was a check, and they gave me that check and then said, that money on that check you owe us. And under the bills of exchange, I sign and date it and give it them back, and they refused it. They are now committing fraud against the taxpayer and not fulfilling their obligation. What can I do about that? The district judge told me to become claimant, like yourselves did, and take them to court. So I was to take a utility company that made £3.4 billion profit to court and sue them. I was fighting for my life in them courts, Kat. You know, armed police were calling me. All that crap. And people sit there and judge you and say, well, you've not got to win, have you? So it obviously doesn't work. That's so disingenuous. It's disgusting. It's dirty to throw that on other people. All these, you know, and I have to say, especially after Richard's show, 98, 99% of all the comments I had were positive. But you still had the bell ends that either paid to come on and talk shit, or they absolutely don't know what they're talking about, and they want to have some relevance in their life. Brilliant. Well, if you're so good at it and we're so wrong, go into a courtroom next week and win it all for us. Simple.
That's exactly what I and Darren say. Go and do it then. Go and do it. And you'll soon see. Do you know what I mean? It's quite worrying sometimes, you know, you've got, just because I know what can be lost from it. Do you know what I mean? I know that people can, you know, there's a lot of people got their homes and stuff riding on a lot of this. Do you know what I mean? And unless you're honest with them, you know, you can end up in real hot water.
That's the dirty part. We've had people come to our meetings, and one fella had 2 properties, and they were going to steal the properties. I can't even remember what the argument was, but somebody had told him that this is what they do. The person who told him that has never been in a courtroom, but he thinks he's read something somewhere, and this is what you can do. So this fella went into court and did it. And you could, when we saw the transcripts of things, you could virtually hear the opposition rubbing their hands and laughing because you've got 2 properties full of equity. And we just basically told him, he said, do you want to keep your properties? I said, yeah. We said, set up a payment plan because you're going to lose your properties next week, which he was in court. He said, if you go into court with this next week, you've lost both properties and you're on the street. If you want to save your properties, set up a payment plan because you can't win it with this. You know, we went in with remedy. We told them that it's a commercial property tax. It took 3 years. They danced around it to try and find it. And they found one word that was used, which was reside. Reside can be used commercially, as in a bed and breakfast. So that's where a judge was able to make an arbitrary decision in a high court council tax case and say, they're capable of being commercial at this moment in time, and I'm not listening to anymore, and shut us down. But now you start the court case again, get to where you were, hopefully get a different judge, and hope that judge is honest enough to turn over another judge's decision. You've no remedy in these courts.
That's the other thing, innit?
I can't paint.
It's not.
I'm not Bob Ross. I can't paint a nice little picture and put some little friends in there and little birds flying when the courts are that corrupt that they're saying, and what? And what?
And that's the problem in a corrupt system. Is nigh on impossible. Do you know what I mean? Is so these things don't work. And there's a lot of people at it. There's a lot of groups set up that are saying that all these remedies, and I'm like, oh, not that I look at them much these days. I haven't got the time. I've got so much going on with the kids and the vaccines, the medical stuff. I don't really have, but occasionally, like Darren will put something on and I'll hear it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm listening to what people are saying and whatever. And both of us are like, oh, wow, I can't believe that they actually going to try this or getting someone else to try it, even worse, because they're not going to win this. They're not going to win it, you know, and it's people, it sounds so promising to them, and they're sort of pumped up to think, oh yeah, this is that silver bullet, and then they're going to lose it, and it's like, then they'll realize what, you know. But what can you do other than tell people? That's why. But you haven't. There's not enough people to do it. There's not enough numbers, not even now. Yeah, that's what it is. They'll all wait until somebody wins, and then they'll all go in on that remedy. But the court, they're not stupid. They know that's going to happen. Exactly the same thing as if me and Darren had won on that securitization issue. Boom, everyone who owes a mortgage going to go straight in using the same thing. They were never going to allow us to win with that, ever. In fact, the only reason they said in the end, because we went back in after they took the house, is that the two reasons why they wouldn't take it forward, not that we were wrong. Number one, it's not in the public interest, because that's where they love using that one. It's not in the public interest. And the other one was you can't afford it. That was it. Do you know what I mean? So to have that much evidence and whatever, and have the remedy there, but say that, you know, is they're not going to let certain things go, and they won't, because they know that other people were going to tell other people, and they're going to come in straight, and like you had the chat, like all those years ago, like you say, it's gone now. That time period is gone. And the only thing that we can do now is numbers, but everyone else is waiting on everyone else to go in and do it. So we haven't got the numbers from that point of view. Do you know what I mean? So just have to deal with it.
The thing I found, Kat, is COVID woke a lot of people up. But then once they realised what the problems were, they wanted the easy fix. So for the last 3 years, I've had to deal with people who were basically being told to just change your meters right and don't tell anyone because it's all free. And then go into courts and say, I have no contract. Stuff that I knew didn't work 10 years ago. What are you doing it for now? Again, it's because there's some people telling people to do that. And when they create those court cases and lose them, it creates a stumbling block for somebody else who comes along. Many people in that, I hate using it, and I know you do as well, that truth movement, many people took court cases on to lose on purpose, in my opinion. And others used other people as guinea pigs.
Oh,
and
definitely.
Those guinea pigs
as guinea pigs. And then to everyone else, then it's sort of a deterrent then, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Don't really want to try it type of thing, you know?
Well, Alex was involved. Alex, tell Kat about the notice to the constabularies. Again, it was numbers that we needed in that.
Yeah, we served all 46 of the police constabularies. With treason notices, basically, it was around the lockdown and what they were doing. But we also had some stuff on 5G right across the board. So about 4 or 5 different fronts. And we just, we made it clear to each chief constable that they were committing treason, really, by supporting the government, because they're under oath of public office to serve members of the public, whereas in fact they're just operating like a private militia, serving the interests of, power. So they're acting like a private, like G4S, really. It's the same with their military. They just, they've just been co-opted. It's the same with the US military by powerful elites. So everyone would like a private army and a private police force to police their interests instead of the interests of the public. But, we were convinced that they were not upholding their duty to members of the public. So we went for it big time over probably around 6 to 8 weeks. So we organised a lot of meetings. We wanted there to be potentially many hundreds of people at each serve, but really we were looking at maybe in some cases only 3 or 4 people, up to maybe 15 or 20. So we didn't get the numbers we needed. But we did successfully serve all the constabularies, which was obviously a landmark. Nothing really came of it except awareness. We raised a lot of awareness. There were a lot of video promotions done and a lot of bonding done and a lot of connecting done. We didn't achieve the result we were aiming for. We didn't think we necessarily would, but it was still good to come together and show that the people could organise around issues that are vitally important. We understood we needed to challenge the courts as well. Paul made that clear to us at the time. It wasn't just the police. We needed to challenge the judicial system as well, and the politicians, the MPs, and I would say also particularly the media. The media needs to be brought to account, because unfortunately now you can't get honest journalists. I mean, John Pilger died not too long ago now, maybe about 15 months or so ago. And he was a brilliant journalist who exposed a lot of stuff. And if you don't have honest journalists operate for honest brokers in media, which we don't, then you have a real big problem, because they're a linchpin of indoctrinating people, because most people still believe mainstream sources, unfortunately.
Yeah, they do. They do. And that's the thing, isn't it? I work with Lou on Liberty Tactics. So obviously we're an alternative media source, but we don't get the the mainstream media is the big one that's going to reach all the people. Do you know what I mean? So we could do our best on the other side. But yeah, you're right. The media are, they're massively complicit in all of this. And we know that. And I do think a lot of people are actually kind of realizing that the media have, especially over the last 4 years when it, you know, with COVID and whatever, I think a lot of people, like Paul said earlier, they won't, you know, that was a massive trigger moment for a lot of people. And they would have had to have realized that the media was lying to them, because they did, and they were obvious about it. And, you know, looking back now, you can see what they were spinning were absolute lies. So there's a lot of distrust then for the mainstream media, but it's really difficult on an alternative media side to even get out there, do you know, because we're just censored all the time. You know what it's like, you know, they just censor you, just push you to the you know, the technocrats can just put a pin on you and just go there, you don't need to see your stuff, and just put all the mainstream media up so everyone else sees it. It's just psychological warfare, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? To the masses, and has been for a long time. And the media play the biggest part in it, as far as I'm concerned. They do play the biggest part in, you know, championing all these elitist, dodgy people and agendas and whatever. They're the ones who are pushing it all. And yeah, to find an honest mainstream journalist, yeah, you're going to be pushed, I think. And, you know, plenty of alternative ones out there, but mainstream ones, well, you wouldn't have the job, would you, unless you were going to push their agendas? You'd be laid off pretty quickly.
I mean, basically, here, this idea, I mean, the raconteurs report.
Sorry, Alex, I was just going to say, if we had mainstream media reporters who were actually real journalists, they wouldn't have got away with any of this. That's why Rockefeller said in the late 60s, in the 80s stories, he thanked the mainstream media for not publishing what they were doing. Go on, sorry, Alex, what were you saying?
Yeah, and
the raconteurs reports made a couple of comments here. The first one was that mainstream media is pretty much dead and most don't watch it anymore. So I beg to differ. That it's a convenient notion to believe that the mainstream media is dead, but I know loads of people, for whatever reason, they're technophobes, they've still got old-style televisions, you know, they're watching BBC or
the elderly especially, I think, isn't it? Because they, like you say, they're not familiar with technology and whatever, you know.
Yeah, those of us who are awake,
totally understand what you mean.
For those of us who are awake, don't bother with it at all, because we know there's no credibility. So the question is getting a handle, trying to get a really objective picture, the degree to which people are still trusting these sources, and even people who are suspicious of them, they don't necessarily go anywhere else, and they still, you know, they'll still believe that Vladimir Putin's a bad guy. Well, he's no worse than any other politician. But we have to vilify him, and these narratives are so tedious. But a lot of people who supposedly are doubtful of mainstream media still believe that the tropes and memes and narratives about people like Putin, and people used to believe for ages about Farage. Oh, he's a right wing bigot. It's like, well, he clearly isn't. You've just placed him on the right wing. So, you know, I just don't buy it that mainstream media is dead. Unfortunately, I wish it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of distrust, but I know what you're saying. It's only by the people who kind of know. You know what I mean? Like, who have woke up to it. You know, the rest are still watching it. Right, guys, I'm going to have to shoot. I am.
No worries.
But
it's
been lovely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, though, guys.
No, thanks for your testimony. Thanks for coming on. You know, I'm glad that out of all that shite that we've been through, I mean, you couldn't change it, could you, Pat? Because you wouldn't be where you are now. So even those poor decisions, even those bad decisions, here you are.
They all led somewhere, didn't they? And they all led me to Christ. And I, like I say, we were baptized as a family a couple of weeks ago. Myself and Darren are getting married after 16 years now next year. And I honestly, as much as I'm going through, you know, obviously carrying on doing my work, exposing everything, I just got a kind of peace about me now, you know, and I'm really loving the way things are at the moment. And like you say, all of that nonsense that I had to go through and losing all that, you know, I'm humbled and I'm really couldn't be more happy to be where I am now. So yeah, it all happened for a reason. And I'm, like I say, really happy. So thank you so much, guys. It's been great. It's been a really great chat, both of you. Thank you for having me on. And
Yes.
and I'll catch up with you soon, guys.
Yeah, Lou actually mentioned
Yeah. Thanks, Kat.
doing a show with her. So I don't know if I'm going to possibly do Liberty Tactics with you two.
Brilliant.
So let me know.
Would love to have you on.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Good night, both.
Night night.
Good night,
Hold on.
both. Ta-da.
I thought Kat was going to say something else then.
I think it was ta-ra, mate.
I thought she said,
Right.
Can I?
No, I think it was Welsh.
Right.
Right. Because we've done just over 2.5 hours. I'm going to throw the link into the chat room to see if anybody wants to come on for the last part. 3 hours seems to be what we're doing at the minute. I was only going to do the 2 hours, especially with the amount of issues I've had this end, but I've no doubt that I'm going to have one taker here, mate. I wonder who do you think it'd be, Alex?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
Has he not disappeared? I've not seen him
No.
on for a while.
Yeah, you have. He's under the raconteurs report now.
Ah, right. He's a shapeshifter.
He is. Well, there you go. Well, you wouldn't take long for the knobhead to come on, didn't I?
Hey, I changed my name. I'm not a knobhead no more.
No, you're always first, and that means you're always a knobhead. Listen, there was no point bringing you on, Taylor, because we were having too much trouble. So if I'd have brought you on and had 4 on with the issues I've had this end, I've been getting kicked off my own show 4 times tonight.
Yeah, I noticed that. I've been watching, and even Alex got kicked off one time. Dude,
well, I never know with Alex. Alex pretends he's got kicked off and then just goes over and meanders and has a glass of port or something like that.
Hey, I mean, if they're not letting you back in, you might as well use the time that you're off to do something.
Yeah, I've not got any port, Webby.
Oh, right. Must be something else.
I drunk it all. Making me sound like a proper wino. I don't drink much, actually.
Well, but hey, if you're having connection issues and you need someone to ask the questions for you while you sort out your connection, just you don't ever see me having connection issues, so I can you just bring me on or whatever, and I can help out.
Taylor, it's because I'm away. I'm away at the caravan at the minute, so I'm hotspotting from my phone, and it's not a great connection. When I'm back at home, I don't have issues, so I'll be back home.
Hotspotting is not good. Hotspotting sucks.
Yeah, it's doing its job, but. It was either take 2 weeks off the show or see what we could do, and it's not been too bad. So, so come on then. Trump's nearly got shot at again. Is this another ruse?
Yeah, I believe you asked me that in an email, and I emailed you back saying that. Yeah. So
yeah, but the people who were watching and listening were
they don't know that. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
So go ahead.
So. We're going to talk about so I'll just spend a couple minutes talking about that. First off, I knew obviously right away that it's a deception. If the first one's a deception, then why would the second one not be? So you can use a logical inference there. But also, when you saw Ron DeSantis saying that he was going to come out and have a private investigation into this quote unquote assassination attempt, that there's some BS to it, because Ron DeSantis has always been a Trump ally. And as far as the reason for this fake shooting, well, I can only guess, but I'm assuming that the reason is because they want to bring the idea of assassination attempts back into the public view. Because let's be real here, the public, they always forget the things that happened the day before. You know, you can have this big ass news story on BBC or CNN or whatever, but people are just going to forget about it in like a day or two or a week at most. And since we're so close to the election, you probably wanted to just bring it back into the public view so people remember, yeah, assassination attempts are a thing. You know what I'm saying? Because people have such a low attention span these days that they forget everything. Unfortunately, but it is what it is. Again, this is just a guess on my part. Oh, go ahead.
I think society's bred to think like that, Taylor.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, they have been.
Yeah.
I even had that issue at some at certain times, so I know what it's like.
So, what's this new channel of yours? Seeing as you're stealing part of my show and part of Jason's show to come up with this.
I mentioned this before that I named my show this as as inspired by Rock Hunters News and by your show, because I think both of you are some of my biggest inspirations. So I'm like, I'll take the name from one half of Rock Hunters News and the other half from yours, and just call it the Rock Hunters Report. Like a homage. Thank you, I appreciate that. But I can finally live stream now. My other channel, the one that I've been using for about the last couple year or so, cannot live stream. This one can. I tested it because the browser Brave. You know that browser, right?
No.
Very good browser. I definitely recommend it. It has a built-in web call function that you can use, and you can attach it to your YouTube channel and live stream from there. It's really handy. And that's what I'm going to try doing. So, you know, if I can have guests on.
It's what StreamYard does, Taylor. It's what StreamYard does. When I go live, I can click on, if I wanted to go live on Facebook as well, I can click on YouTube and Facebook and it goes out on both. That's why I use StreamYard. That's why Jason always used StreamYard as well. It's a really straightforward platform. Although, having said that, I've only just found out that I can have up to 10 guests on.
Yeah. I told you, man. I told you can have more than 2 or 3 people on.
yeah, you told me, but you couldn't tell me how to do it, though, could you?
Oh, I mean, how can I tell you how to do it? It's just invite people. Just have people in. It's self-explanatory. Oh, I mean, how can I tell you how to do it? It's just invite people. Oh, that echo, though.
Oh, are you there, big guy?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I don't.
Yeah,
nearly. There.
Nearly.
I can just about see you.
How's it going?
Going all good.
All right, mate. You?
Yeah. I was listening to chat for a bit.
Good man. Well,
Yeah,
I noticed one of the comments in the group that you got something. You reckon there's something going on October the 2nd, quite a bit.
Yeah, I've been looking at that. There's a couple of events happening. There's I think it's the last. Is it solar or lunar eclipse of the year? I think is it Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, is happening.
Feast of Trumpets next week. First
is
week
that,
in
October?
Yeah.
First
week in October, Feast of Trumpet.
Right. Yeah. There's I've been sending you some messages on Facebook. I don't know if you've seen any. You know that Brandon Joe Williams.
I have, mate. I was meant to text you back today. I've not had a chance to look at it, pal.
Yeah. I'll give a quick
if you want to go
rundown.
Yeah.
I'll not go too much into it. So it's obviously it's hours and hours worth of stuff that he's done. So in America at the minute, he's basically getting people to go to car forecourts, go and get like a finance, like set up a finance deal on a car, and then he's getting them to write without recourse, pay to the order of, and then put in the all caps name, and then put in their name, and then / agent, and then signing where it's signed. Because he's had people on his page, they've been sending in pictures of their mortgages, and that's literally what it is in all these mortgages, all these mortgage document pictures that he's been getting. It's like there's a stamp, and it says, and it's same for like presidential decisions or whoever makes decisions in America. There's like a stamp that goes on, and it just says, without recourse, pay to the order of, and then it'll say whatever company it is, like United States or whatever corporation, and then it's signed by whoever's stamping it on the day. And that's what he's saying is it stops negotiations of the instrument. So yeah, he's been getting people to go in, and they've been getting the keys, and the last one that I've seen, it were $83,000 worth of like a pickup truck, and they just sign without recourse, pay to the order of, They get the keys off them, they get the document back, and that's it. And obviously, if they ring back or send them a letter to say there's something wrong with the way that you've signed, or there's something wrong with the document, then it's them. They're then committing fraud, because obviously when you do the stamp and you go over or whatever, or you write whatever, it's turning that back into the instrument that can be negotiated on. So obviously we know when we sign for loans or mortgages or any other type of thing with finance involved or credit involved, you sign at the bottom of the document. But then what happens, they take that document away, and then this is when they put in the stamps on. It goes to, like, I don't know, CFO or whoever, and they're the ones that are stamping and stopping negotiation. And then it's saying paid to the order of, and then whatever name the company is, and then that other not individual, not person, but that being is then signing their name onto it as well. And that's what's transferring the money, is what he's saying. So he's been getting people to put their own names on these documents. So they get the car, they get the keys, they get the car, and then they send off the what is now either a note or a negotiable instrument, and they're sending it off. And then obviously, because he's told them to put their name in all caps, that then means that their straw man is then owed the $83,000 again. So that's what basically what I've been looking into. I've done 2 of his videos on his course. I think there's like 7 or 8 altogether. So I'm just doing bit at a time, and I'm trying to like translate it back over into UK so that people in the UK can start doing it. And it should be fairly.
Rich,
Sorry?
is it different to Peter of England's wee rechecks? Is it different to that?
I'm not sure. You have to show me what he did.
Well, I know a fella who wrote a 13 grand promissory note for an Audi, and he got the keys and took the car. But then after a month, when they couldn't process that promissory note, they came back for the car. Because if you can promise to pay, you can write a promissory note and promise to pay £80,000 for a car. But if the economy collapsed, they're going to come for the promise. They don't want the promise anymore. They want the payment. So that's where it falls down. That it's fraud if you haven't actually got the funds to pay for that. Even though I've seen them work, it's not clear. That's why it was interesting when you said it. If you've got some more information on that, or as you go along you get some more information, bring it up for us, lad.
Yeah. I'd have to see how he's done his promissory note. Apparently, Danny Knight. You know who Danny Knight is?
I do know Danny Knight. He's just been wiped off Facebook again, hasn't he?
He has. Yeah, he's off again, isn't he? Yeah, he'd have loved this information. He got a Mitsubishi L200 from what I remember using promissory note. And he also, when he ended up going to court, ended up discharging the court fees using promissory note as well. But yeah, this isn't using promissory note. This is turning their financial documents into either the negotiable instrument or note, and basically saying that you've taken charge of that document. And with bills of exchange, you tender the document back to them. You put your mark on and write whatever. You tender the promissory note back to them. As soon as they've got it in their hands, that's delivered then. So either they give you the note back straight away and say there's an issue with that, or they take it away and they use it. So if they're handing it you back, they're basically saying, "Oh well, the debt never existed then, so you still get the car, don't you?" You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I've seen loads of people using commemorative coins at petrol stations. I'd like to go to a petrol station and just write the promissory note out, like whatever price it comes to, and then just write the promissory note out and be like, "There you go," and then have them on camera. And then if they hand it me back, I'll be like, "Oh well, it never existed," and I'll just drive off and wait for police to come and be like, "Well, I use the bills of exchange to pay for it. He says he didn't accept the promissory note, so if he's not accepting the promissory note, it's him who's frauding, and obviously I don't owe him any money anymore."
Do you know what? We'd have to go right into that because I'm not sure on the. I can understand how it would work. I can understand it, but I've not seen them accepted to the point where it's going to be accepted as legal tender. I mean, they're even not accepting real promises, real cash. Some firms can really refuse that now. You've got McDonald's who won't take a £50 note. Some won't even take a £20 note, especially if it's an older legal tender. They want you to take it to the bank and get a new one, or they won't take it off your hands. So it's interesting to see if there's enough people who started to do that. At least it would get into a courtroom and see what they would, how can I put it? If they're not accepting, then they would have to tell us why they're not accepting it, which gives us information. That's the biggest problem with this stuff now. There's no. Everybody's sat behind a keyboard and telling other people what to do, but the people don't know what to do with it, so nobody's doing anything. And even the mistakes give you information. The problem that we had was we had people purposely losing these court cases, which is, that's a different kettle of what's it's. I think it's a bit interesting to find out the ins and outs and why these won't be accepted. I want to hear them tell us why they're not accepted. The thing with promissory notes and what I was doing with the utilities was it was a moot point for me, because if I promise to pay me bills with a promissory note that I make, it's the same as using cash. And if I'm using cash, I'm not balancing the books, so I'm still adding to the national debt. So there was no remedy for me. I wanted to remedy the national debt. I wanted to start chipping away at that national debt, because if everybody settled their accounts in the correct way, that national debt wouldn't be there. And that means they wouldn't keep putting the rates up for all the businesses. And guess what? We're classed as businesses. So when we decide to pay our bills, they can't balance the books of the creditors. So they put the bills up, and you end up paying more because you can't do your job properly. So it was a silly thing for me to get involved with people who were saying they were paying for the bills with promissory notes. You might as well just pay them. Just writing it on a piece of paper because you don't think you've spent your cash. It's a different. It was still, it was still a moot point because of the national debt. You have some people who say national debt's a fallacy, the national debt is there, and the debt is used as an asset. You know, in a debt-based economy, debt is an asset, believe it or not. The problem is they're leaving all the debt with the people and taking all the equity themselves. And that's where we've got to balance it up.
This is why if you get any chance, have a look into what this Brandon guy is doing. He's had about 100 people now that have used the document in that way without recourse, paid to the order, paid to, I forgot what the wording is, and then the way that he signs it, he's had like 100 people now with really like $50,000, $80,000 worth of vehicles, and then they're just walking away with keys. They say if they try and say anything back, they're basically because it's UCC, isn't it? UCC 3 that deals with negotiable instruments, which is basically what the same as Bills of Exchange 1882 is, which is pretty much what all the financial system is based on. So I don't think it's going to be too hard to transfer it over to here. You see, he doesn't just do that. He does. It's like a multitude of stuff. There's like 5 or 6 things that he does to be able to get into the position to be able to do what he's doing. So at the minute, he's lining it up. So you've heard of black cards in America when famous people get a black card?
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like basically unlimited credit. He's working away to get it so that he can use one of them.
Yeah, like I said, probably 15 years ago, people were talking about UCC and using files like that because Max Clifford, you know, if you break your arm, it's a set fee in our justice system. But Max Clifford knew how to bring in the UCC, so he could get up to £1 million for any injury. It would be interesting to know how we invoke that and how we could use it, because if there's anybody successfully using it, mate, they're not telling anyone, and they're certainly not putting it on any YouTube channels or videos. The closest I've ever seen is people, the likes of Dean Clifford. He had a really good battle with them in Canada, you know, over a farm and everything. And, you know, it's too much to go into what Dean Clifford was involved in. And it's same with Romney Stewart down in Australia. The information is there for us to have access to all the stuff you're talking about. The problem is, if this was opened up to everybody, where people believed that, like in this country, I you know, as a quick equation, 70 million people, if they're all registered, let's call it 300 grand a piece in credit we're each worth. And that goes on the stock exchange every day. So if the stock exchange is doing well, the economy's doing well, that means that 300 grand goes up. So if you buy a house for 100 grand and you don't want to pay that back, your credit rating's now dropped to 200 grand, but within 2 months, maybe less, it's back up to 300 grand because the economy's doing well. However, we've decimated our economy now. Over the last 4 years, we've lost all the middle class businesses. A lot of jobs went there. So now we have a working poor and no middle class. I think if you open that up to people where they thought that they had an open checkbook because people wouldn't think about it, they just start writing silly, they start writing silly promissory notes for everything, and before long they promise to pay for everything that they can't afford, and that technically to me puts it into fraud. So I think it's something that has got to be definitely spoken about, but it's something that's got to have a real deep dive and think about things before people act.
Yeah. Well, we know all the banks are running in fraud, and that they're promising everything. They promise the world, and then when they can't pay up to it, they basically just bankrupt themselves and change the name or whatever, and they whittle the way out of it, or the public pays for it, even if that is what happens.
We're the backing, we're the creditors. So everything's put on our backs. They buy government bonds, and it's all the debt gets given to us. You know, this is why that people, I can't stand it when people can't understand that banks don't lend money. They are not lending our government anything. They are buying stuff through our own credit.
They purchase our securities and they purchase it on the what's it called? One sec, I've got it written down. They purchase it on the Bank of England discount window facility. So there's one in America and there's the one over here, which is Bank of England discount window facility. Which this is what he's trying to get into. He's trying to get into being one of these people on the discount window facility, and being able to purchase all these because of the debts, but then they purchase them and make them into credits, don't they? But yeah, that's what he's trying to get on with. Have you heard the phrase or the term ens legis?
No, I saw that in the chat room. No, explain that for us.
Yeah, so it's obviously a Latin term because it's ens legis. It's got a bit of Latin, isn't it? But it translates into a being of the law. So this Brandon guy calls his straw man or all caps name an ens legis because he's not too sure what it actually is, but it is a being of the law. So it's part of the law. It's not man. It's not actual living, breathing man. It can be, and then it says underneath, it has independent legal personality, such as a corporation. If you now pick your phone up, anyone who's in the UK now, if they pick their phone up and type in ens legis and they put that in now, and you scroll down, it's literally one of the first. I think it's like the third one down on gov.uk. Ens Legis Limited. So it's a company that's called Ens Legis Limited, right? Or ARMS or whatever however you want to say it, and it's linked to this guy, and he is a Rotherham politician, member of Parliament, and so basically that he owns this dormant company since I think it was 2014, 2015. He's called it Ens Legis or Ons Legis Limited, and he's made it a dormant company since then. So obviously he knows exactly how to do it, and it looks like he's a Freemason, but yeah, he clearly knows that there's a certain process where he doesn't have to pay for anything. And yeah, that's I think that's what all politicians get hold of. They get hold of the information to be able to do this type of stuff.
I would say that their accountants get the information. I don't think politicians know anything. Maybe the ones who are higher up might have an inkling.
Yeah.
But most of them are just yes men, yes women. They just say,
Actors.
you know, suckers of Satan's cock. That's all these people are to me. It's despicable though, because you know these people. It's one thing to think that they're laughing up the sleeve at us and things like that, but these people killed, genocided elderly people over the last 3 years. People are dying suddenly from vaccine-related injuries. There's vaccine damage funds. You can't get more than 120 grand if they fine for you. Why? Because it's a public slash fund. Why? Because you can't sue these companies because they're not liable for it. So we've found ourselves now in a position where they've just basically pulled the shutters down. And what are you going to do about it? Yeah. You're just looking at people and going, and what? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Somebody wants to talk to someone on Facebook.
He's trying to get one lad that I know is trying to get in touch with me, but anyway. I just wanted to drop that. I know that there's American people that tune into your show, so if anyone wants to go and have a look at it, Brandon Joe Williams, I think, whoever I said earlier, he's on my Facebook. His website's called onestupidfuck.com. That's the name of his website.
Now that sounds like an American website. Sounds like a website for you, Taylor. That.
Nah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. You got. I don't judge things based off of what they're named. I judge them based off their content.
Well, seeing as you're our American correspondent, check that website out for us.
Sure.
Check it out.
Yeah. Try and get on it, and if you can get free cars, so keep trying.
So we've got 10 minutes left, lad.
Yeah, I'm going to shoot off.
Alex,
I'll
have you
leave.
got any input? Oh, cheers, Rich. All right, God bless, mate. See you next time.
Cheers, mate.
God bless.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you for posting those links in your description of last week's show. I noticed you did that. Say again?
I said I noticed that you were crying that you wanted a spanner.
Yes, so I can actually post links and all that, so instead of just it looking like I posted it on my end, but then everyone else can't see it. So because YouTube shit like that.
I couldn't see him.
That's what I'm saying.
So are you Raconteur's Report now then? You're not Timothy McPherson?
But you can, I'm both, but I'm going to be mainly on this one for here.
All right. Who's Timothy McPherson?
Some random dude I used to know in an online circle. It's not important.
So you just took somebody else's identity. Okay. This is very American, this, isn't it?
Identity theft.
Right. So who's the picture on the web on the Raconteur's Report? Who's
James Perloff.
Oh, is it James Perloff? Right.
Yep.
I've already mentioned him a few times.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys.
Yeah, I'm just looking, Alex. Angie says that Spanner guys had a night.
So who's a Spanner guy?
Well, I mean, the host can give spanners too.
Edward.
Yeah, Ed's our Spanner guy, and he's not. He said hello, and then
I've not really seen him on the chat.
Neither have I.
Yeah, he come in early doors. Come in very early doors, but he's not posting. He must have gone to bed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Saying you interviewed him.
Yeah, I did a few times.
You interviewed him. Are you talking about Perloff?
Yes. Yes, I interviewed him. Talked about many different topics.
What's his rundown? Oh, so he's quite eclectic. He's on many topics.
Yeah, he researches pretty much every topic you could think of, and he's also an Orthodox Christian as well. So he even has a book on saints and miracles as well. He has quite a few books out actually. He stretches all the way back to the 80s in terms of his work.
Yeah. Alex is the book writer. I don't think he's got publishings from 1980s though, have you, Al?
No, nothing from that early.
Not that early. Even though your dark poems from a 9-year-old, how dark were they?
They were dark. They were dark. They were. Yeah.
What can you do? I think I didn't get to say this because I got booted off my own channel. But when you were talking with Kat about writing things down and writing poems and stuff like that, I don't think there's a better therapy for somebody sat on their own. You write things down, and it really does. It really does. It's cathartic. It gets stuff out of you, and you can actually learn from your own writings. I believe I think it's a good bit of therapy that for myself. When you're writing poems and stuff like that, especially if they come out dark, you know they're coming from somewhere. You know you've got relations to that, and it acts as that therapy, doesn't it?
Better out than in.
That's what they say. That's what they say.
I posted my the link to my channel in the private chat.
Have you? Oh, right. Is that
But yes.
that's the Watkins report?
Yes. But yeah, if you could, yeah, if people could subscribe to that, that'd be nice, because I can hold live streams on it. I can post videos on it, and it's because like I said, my other channel I wasn't able to do that, so now I can post stuff like if I want to live stream, I don't know, a documentary or something like that, or if I want to have an interview, or if I want to talk to somebody, or just anything. So
only on Rumble that you went live then?
Yes.
I
wasn't able to do it on YouTube.
I don't understand that, but we'll have to just keep going with the likes of YouTube to see how long we've got it for, because who knows how long we've got any of this stuff left for. Went into an Asda today, paid with cash, and the lady behind the counter is going, "Oh, we've got to keep using cash. If they take this off us, we're going to be in trouble." I went, "Yeah, you're right." People know this stuff. People know. People are concerned. It's just, is there enough people to say no? It's got to get to that point where, it's like Neo in the Matrix. All the bullets are being shot at him, and he just goes, "No." That's where it's got to come down to. But
speaking of the Matrix,
it's trying to have faith in people. It runs low, that energy, doesn't it, Alex? Having faith in people.
Yeah.
Go on, Taylor. Finish what you were saying, because we've only got 4 minutes left.
I was going to say, speaking of the Matrix, did you know there was a 9/11 comm in there?
Yes.
Yeah, the passport.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure you knew that.
It's been through so much. All things that are happening have always been predicted. They've always been put forward. But it's only people that see it. I mean, me and Alex have had quite a few conversations that we recognise patterns. When you recognise a pattern and you keep seeing the same pattern, it might not be that man or that woman or this or that, but there's a pattern there. And you've got to decipher that pattern. And like I say,
right.
when you see Bill Gates talking about putting billions into vaccines because there's a massive pandemic that's coming, and if we do the right kind of vaccines, we'll be able to lower population. And then all of a sudden we've got a deadly pandemic and Bill Gates is at the front of it, and nobody's going, "He's a liar. He said he's going to do this." Nobody bothers, because they've already been pre-programmed, or they're not interested. They've got a life. But these are the people that still vote for Labour because their dad did. It's, we're, all society, all politics, all banking, all law, all judiciary, it's all falling apart. And are there going to be enough? You mentioned earlier, Alex, in the chat about numbers. Is there going to be enough numbers to, are there enough numbers of people who dig the roads, who fix the pipes, who generate the heat, who do all this stuff? Is there enough people in those jobs to keep the infrastructure going so that we can take over the infrastructure? The only problem that we've got is we can't organise, and they know that. And this is where we get left to. I'll try and remember to make you a spanner, your tool, Taylor.
Yeah, pretty sure all you should do is just right-click on my name or something like that. Hit the 3 dots.
Yeah, I know what to do now, mate. Thanks.
And also, thank goodness.
What?
Go on.
Go
I was
on,
going to say, thank goodness that son of a bitch Gates is either in Gitmo or he's dead by now. Thank goodness. He can join. He can join fucking Fauci and the rest of them.
Well, like I say, I hope that's true. I hope that is true, because at least there's some justice there. But I can't see what's coming being better, if you like. I think we're going to have a false dawn. I think people are going to see what they think is going to be, not revolution so much, but I don't know, changes. You can't see what Biden and Harris has done, whether it's them or people in masks, what they've done to the American public. They've just set whoever, if it wasn't Trump, whoever was up against them, they would win. They've made it pretty slanted. So I'll have to be on YouTube, Taylor, to make you a spammer. I can't do it from this chat room. So we'll hopefully I'll do it for you next week if you're online. All right, mate.
Yeah. I'll say is, everyone, Webby did, like I said, but earlier, he posted a bunch of links that I emailed him in the description of last week's show. Go check out those links. If you want stuff on, people have been asking me, oh, where's your proof of Q? Where's your evidence? What has Trump done? What is blah, 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 blah. It's all in there. Just take the time and actually go watch it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it may look intimidating because the videos are rather long and there's a lot of them, but you were asking a lot of questions, and I wanted to cover all the bases, and realistically I could have linked a lot more too, like that. I didn't even get everything. I only just wanted to get like the main stuff, and I even sent them in order for people to actually look at. Like, okay, I think you should see this first, and then go to this one, and then this one. It's like a boiling the frog kind of thing. Like you start with
right. People go and look at what they want when they want to do it anyway, mate. All you can do is speak your piece, what you've said, and put the links out. People will or the people won't. I've known for 15 years, Taylor, you can't, the epitome of that story of you can lead a horse to water. It's up to what people do. The only thing that I would say is in the last 3-4 years, it has changed, because COVID did wake a lot of people up who were slumbering well away, including a few family members of mine. But it's how far they're willing to go, that type of thing. So anyway, Taylor, thanks for that, mate. I'll stay in touch with us, and I'll see you next week, pal.
Okay. Thanks again.
God bless, mate. Alex, anything to say in closing, man?
Yeah, I think so. Just a little. When we talk about things like this, week in, week out, some people might think, like, what are we accomplishing? Are we repeating ourselves? Some people might think that, and it is, that we can get into our mantras and stuff, and we can get into rabbit holes, and we don't want to do that. But there is something about coming together weekly, getting people to come on, getting them to share the stories. And for me, that's the most important thing. Not that we get immediate answers. If these things were easy, we wouldn't be scratching our heads in the way that we are. But it's all character building. And at the end of the day, every exploration that we undertake, rather than settling, for a lot of the time, secondhand news, people pass articles on written by somebody else. Somebody wrote something, I share it, it gets censored on YouTube or on Facebook. And at the end of the day, it's all about galvanizing ourselves, developing resilience, becoming a unique individual, coming into your power, into your strength. We were talking before about, when you asked me about the serves and telling Kat about the serves, it was good because it galvanized people. It galvanized them. They found their voice, they got up, they came out and they organized around something. And we'll never get perfect organization. And, basically the advantages are on their side. But the point is, as we said before, they're sterile. Psychopaths are sterile. They're not creative at all. And if you look at somebody like Ren, you know, for example, as an artist, as a performance artist, and how he promoted himself on YouTube, he faces many of the issues that all independent operators have on YouTube. And although he's not talking specifically politically, he has done songs like Money Game, and he does get a lot of critical stuff, and he talks about the light and the dark, like in High Rent. So the point about creative expression and use of social media platforms is, if you do it in the right way, you can get quite a following, and you can build something. That's why they're so scared of celebrities, and that's why so many celebrities get bumped off when they step out of line, because they have such a big following. Most of us are peasants. Nobody's really, they don't really care that much. So you become a big fish, they'll leave you alone. But by developing our creative abilities, doing the things that they can't do, developing ourselves, building up our strength, if we do that, and again, talking about kids and all the stuff that's happening in schools, if we're bringing up our kids in the right way, you know, teaching them to think for themselves, it's going to be a grassroots movement, Paul. I think that might take years. It might take years, but that's not an excuse to not carry on and persist.
No, well, like I said, I think we're 9 shows in now with this, Alex. And, you know, when we started it, because, I mean, I've not done anything for a few years previous. And when we started it, we said if there's just me and you, maybe a couple of friends who know that we're doing it, it would be a start. But like Angie's just posted, 45 to 50 people consistent. You can't you can't ask for more than that, because, you know, we're not like, we've not got movies, we've not got all this showing things, presentation. It's about talking. But if we don't start talking, then we don't get anywhere. I mean, I've watched loads of documentaries that look brilliant, but the information in there is a little bit skewed. You know, I'm seeing people now for the first time saying, look at Zeitgeist. By all means, look at Zeitgeist, but let's have a think about it while you're watching it. Don't just think this is the truth. Do your due diligence on all these documentaries, whatever the information is. You know, if you don't know what a joint gyro credit check is and I'm talking crap, go and read the bills of exchange. And if you don't want to read the bills of exchange, pay your bills. I don't care anymore. It's too tiring. It's too tiring to try and tell people the simplicity of what it is. It's not complicated. It really isn't complicated. It just, once you know what it means, what do you do about it? Well, you've got to go to a court. And then when the courts are not wanting to help you, even though it's a remedy, you know, your hands are tied. So you need people. You need people to go and look at this and challenge this, and challenge it in the right ways. Get it into newspaper articles, get it, and I mean mainstream. That was why it was amazing to me that with the information I had, like I said to Kat, it was very fundamental to me. It was a big thing that I was taught to pay bills as a creditor in a debt-based economy. If we're taught to do that, and that allows all our equity to be stolen, people should be upset by that. But they weren't. They were more upset with me for telling them that the gas were free. And, you know, that it doesn't swim well for me, that anymore, mate. Not at all.
Well,
so
like Angie said in the chat here, Paul, a lot of us know each other in real life. Maybe we could have a meet-up. I think it's for us, it's knowing how to transition from an online forum to real-world connection. This is a form of connection. But I think this kind of thing operates on every kind of level that you can imagine. It's about being more real. So even when we had that debate earlier, a little bit of a excursion into Christianity and the testimony that Kat brought, you know, the thing is, even you can look at Christianity in a certain way, Paul, and a lot of people do, and they go, imagine each person who's ever lived like a plastic counter, a blue plastic counter that's all the same, and they all belong to God. And this idea that God wants to save all these plastic counters. but every plastic counter looks the same. Well, what kind of God would just engage in some sort of technical exercise in redeeming blue counters? He's probably interested in the unique individual that each one of us is becoming. Because the whole idea in Christianity, unlike a lot of the other religions, is having a personal relationship with God. Well, it's only personal because the person that you are becomes disclosed to the person who God is. Like, you reveal yourself to God and God reveals himself to you. So there's an exchange, even in that idea of a relationship with a person who's transcendent, divine, and isn't like in a room like you and me, so we can't perceive God in the same way. But even then, this idea about knowing God, becoming acquainted with God, knowing yourself better. And it's the same with anything that's a meaningful process. You need to get to know people. When we did the police serves, people came together using, because of lockdown, we used a lot of these types of electronic means of connecting, lots of Zoom meetings and so on. But the energy that came out of people coming together, doing the serves, it built a real sense of solidarity. And these are the things that we've got to build up, because once you've got community, we know their policies divide and conquer. So from our point of view, no matter what methods we use, imperfect or otherwise, galvanize each other, share your research findings, talk about truth loudly, share it with your friends and family, and reinforce each other. It's a full-time job, this now. It's a full-time job. And that might sound depressing. You still got to get
Should you apply?
Say again, Paul.
Should you apply?
Yeah, well, there you go. Because it's not a trifling matter. But
it's your kids. It's your kids. It's your grandkids. It's
there
your
you go.
mum. It's your nan. You know, where does it come down to? It's you. It's me. What can you do? Wait for somebody else to do something. You know, it's time that you shook these shackles off. You know, people are preparing for Halloween, celebrating Halloween and then Christmas. What are you celebrating? Oh, just a little bit of fun to lighten the days. Oh, brilliant. You know, I just, it's hard to try and just go along to get along anymore, Alex. You know, you can't going along to get along, because again, that puts us in Martin Niemöller's position, going along to get along, allowing these things to go on in school because, you know, we don't want to upset people who might want to shit in a litter tray instead of using a toilet. It's beyond me. It's beyond my capacity to have an understanding of that, because I know when my daughter insisted on wanting to be Pikachu at 25, then I'd go, well, no, you can do what you like now. But as a 5-year-old, 6, 7-year-old, talking like Pikachu until she's told I'm not, she wouldn't get anything. What do you want for tea? Pikachu. All right, you're not having any tea then. Yeah, I want some tea, Dad. Soon changes from Pikachu language. You know, it's the common sense thing, Alex, and common sense is just not common anymore. Anyway.
Well, I think again, so perhaps the last thing to end on is, it's a simple thing. It's a 2-letter word, which is no. Look at assertiveness training that you get everywhere. People have forgotten the power of saying no. And like, just think about climate change nonsense, right? You get into all these arguments and debates where the mainstream and most people think it's real, and you know you're banging your head against the wall. But you just have to go, no, I don't believe that. I think it's rubbish. And you don't have to give a reason why. Any ideologue can tell you and insist and try and, you know, insist that a bunch of politicians can vote on there being a climate crisis. I mean, I ask you, you know, meeting in Parliament to
You've
vote.
been 4 years for that.
It's just.
It.
But you can't fight it like on a policy level again. If you try and contest it on the level of the ideas, or say trust the science. So we've got to find a way of saying no. Say no. I'm saying no because I just think it's garbage. I don't believe your nonsense. I choose not to believe it. And you can't make me believe something that I don't believe, because I'm a cognitive dissident. Yeah. That's the title of one of my poems, Cognitive Dissident. And I think we need to be cognitive dissidents. You know, it's like, no, I don't believe that. I'm not taking it on board.
Instead of being in cognitive dissonance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm a cognitive dissident. I really enjoyed writing that poem. If I had it to hand, I'd read it out, but I haven't, so I can't remember.
Well, have it to hand for next week's show, mate.
Yeah, I'll read cognitive dissonance as a way of introducing everything.
We'll open it up with that next week.
Yeah, right. Sounds like a plan.
Cheers, Alex. Hang about a bit, and I'll speak to you after we've closed up.
Yeah, he's got it there. As Zeus Scott. I will read some of it next week.
Nice one.
Yeah. Cognitive dissident. Good idea, Angie. We'll get our cognitive dissident t-shirts printed. Hey, you got some merchandise, Webby. We can start selling merch and making like 50 pence a week.
I've already got some, mate, but it cost me a load to make these shirts.
There you go.
Anybody got cheap t-shirt ideas and you want to put it through, give us a shout.
Yeah, thanks,
Cheers,
everybody.
Speak to you in a minute. Technical issues. Your gas is free, Spanish chicken. Just remember that. Probably be on my tombstone. Again, thanks, guys, who's managed to hang in for 3 hours again. We keep saying we'll only do the 2, but you know, when you've got guests on as well, and then hopefully we do throw it open to get some more views in. A few weeks back, we had 4 on with coming up with some new views and opinions and asking questions, and very much what we want. So please, if you do join the chat room on a regular basis, come on, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just say hello or anything. You're always welcome, because we are all in this together. You know, I know you've heard politicians say that, but you know, we're on the front line here. We've been on the front line for 10, 15 years. Kat herself has been on the front line as well. Many, many others are all doing this. People in the chat room are on the front lines. It's time that we got some kind of organisation together, be it in small groups that can talk with each other, which is coming now through the People's Shadow Councils and the Common Assemblies. You know, this may be something new for us. Who knows? We might be able to once and for all, instead of going over the same stuff and accepting, you know, everything that comes. Because when we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, well, that's a very definition of insanity. So we need to try something a little bit different to see if it's, I don't know, see if it's possible that we can move on and help people. Technical issues again. So yeah, it comes down to that. We'll come here every week and we'll have a chat and see what we can do to try and spark something in people's minds, because everybody knows there's something wrong, but we know there's only one solution. It's just getting yourself right with what that solution is. See you next week on the Webster Report.
Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.